All right. Hello,
Hi.
hello, everyone. We are back again with the girls and a wonderful guest. Danielle is with us today. We will be discussing man, forest, bear, the infamous viral TikTok. If you guys haven't seen it, you know what? Good for you. But I have seen, I think, 100 videos at this point, probably, of people having discourse over this. So I'm excited to go over it. Please let me know how the volume is. I will adjust everyone's microphones as needed. So, chat, please keep me up to date. With that said, since Danielle, you are the guest today, would you like to introduce yourself to our lovely audience?
Sure. Thanks for having me here.
Happy
So,
to.
hey, everybody. Yeah, I'm a relationship coach and matchmaker for specifically the San Diego region, but I particularly help single independent women attract thriving relationships. I also have a background of working as an exotic dancer in the past.
Nice. Okay. And then since it's successful women, do you ever work with men as your clientele or is it gender neutral? Do you have a gender specific clientele or no?
It's interesting. I always advertise myself as helping women, but I've been finding a lot of men coming into my DMs asking for advice.
Great.
I do have a business partner that particularly works with men because I want someone who's like really deep into that, like true expert in that. And I figured working with her is going to make it powerful.
Great.
I will be working with her to work with men, but my jam is really with women.
I love that. Okay, we love to know our niches. With that said, we wanted to talk about empowerment today, but then this viral TikTok happened. So let's try to incorporate that theme into the conversation. If you guys haven't seen the viral TikTok, um, it basically a man approaches women on the street and says, would you rather be in the forest with a bear or a man? Random bear, random man. Which one would you prefer? So I want to go down the line, have you guys, give your thoughts. Danielle, do you want to start with yourself? Would you rather be in the forest with a man or a bear?
That's so interesting. Whoa. Um, okay, well, my immediate, without overthinking, is with the man because I'm pretty, I don't know, I've been getting good response with men. The past version of me would probably pick a bear. um, but yeah, I would pick a man. There's probably
Okay.
more I can say about this, but I'm curious what everyone else will say.
Yeah, we'll dive into it. Genevieve, what about you?
So I would also choose the man. I can see where people are coming from in choosing the bear, but for me, I would definitely choose the man.
Okay, fair. I love that. Harmony?
Okay, yeah, I would also choose the man, but okay, so my point of view is sort of like I was kind of like thinking about this. I feel like as a sex worker, as an escort, I'm sort of like a professional in the arena of men, right? So I look at myself sort
Mhm.
of like maybe like Steve Irwin, right? Like so Steve Irwin with like nature, right? He's an expert. He knows how to handle nature, right? But he's not going to tell everyone else, okay, you should fuck with nature. You know what I mean? So like I would choose man, but I also think most women should probably choose bear.
Okay, I love that. In Arena, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
So this question is so complicated for me because it raises so many other questions. If we pose it as, do I want to pick the average man versus the average bear, I'd pick the average man. If the question is, do I want to pick the worst bear or the worst man, I'd pick the worst bear. And it depends on the species of bear too. Are we talking black bear? Because those
Mm,
you could kind of scare off pretty easily. Are we talking grizzly bear? Well, good fucking luck to me.
Bear
Polar
that's
bear is
used to
definitely in.
humans. Yeah.
Yeah, like so
Yeah.
it depends. So average man would definitely pick over average bear for sure.
yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, initially, my brain went right to, okay, well, what's the scenario with both and what's the best scenario with both? So in the worst scenario, I'm choosing the bear. And then even in the best case scenario, I can't decide is the best case scenario that the man and I work together to get out of the forest or is the best case scenario that he leaves me alone? I think it's that we work together to get out of the forest, right? Like two heads are better than one. And then the best case scenario with the bear is that he leaves me alone altogether. But the worst case scenario with the bear is I die. And the worst case scenario with the guy is, well, there's who knows? There's too many options, that I think we could all think of. So I think that's where most women were coming from when they chose the bear. What was interesting was to see how angry certain kinds of men got in which categories, the differences between single men reacting and men with children reacting, and specifically men with daughters. So a lot of the dads that I found, though I did find a few that countered this idea, a few of the dads that I found were terrified at the idea of their little girl being in the forest with a man, but less so with the bear because they figured, and I think a lot of people had this thought process, with the bear, you're probably in like having an interaction with one form of violence versus with a man, it could be multiple forms of violence. And so I thought that was interesting. Now, if I extended the conversation out just for a quick poll, if you had to choose a woman, a man, or a baby, would you guys choose differently? Or a bear, of course, but would you choose differently if you could choose a different, would you care for a child over dealing with a bear? Would you choose a woman over dealing with a man? How much of
Like,
that is
who
going to
would
play a
we
role?
want to encounter? Like, what
Right.
would we do in those scenarios?
Right.
My first choice would be encountering another woman
Mm.
because I feel that similar to like a worst case, best case scenario, right? Like, not that another woman doesn't pose any risk to me, but physically, I'm not super tiny. So, like, if she wants to like fight me, I'm like 5'8". Like, I can hold my own pretty well, I feel like we're an even match, and like best case scenario, we're gonna work together to like build a fire, figure it out. But there feels like very little risk in that situation. Whereas like with a kid, there's also very little risk, but then also there's a lot of additional responsibility. Suddenly I'm not only taking care of myself, I'm now taking care of someone else, and I don't want that. I mean, I don't have kids in real life for a reason.
Right. I feel like literally the same.
At this point, like
Yeah, I agree
Yeah.
completely. Yeah, that was exactly my thought process.
what
Yeah,
about
it
you
would
other
be
ladies?
a woman first, then baby versus man is tough, especially yeah, that's a tough one. I'd say caveat average man, then baby, then bear. But
Mhm.
again, just because I walk outside to the grocery store and I encounter average men every day, all day, and they're fine. Like, I'm sure, it'll be easier to, get out of the forest together than alone, and or with a baby. So yeah, that's probably. But
Oh,
again, caveat: average man.
Mhm.
are we assuming that we're like lost in the forest?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's what I
okay.
assumed. What did you assume?
Just in the forest.
You're just like going for a hike and you come across
Yeah.
either a random
Oh,
man or a random bear.
when
Yeah.
I heard it, I
'Cause if
assumed
that's
in
the
middle
case,
of the forest. Yeah.
yeah. Like I
Yeah,
would
I
choose
assumed I
a
was like
baby.
lost.
I would choose a baby. I know babies better than adult women.
point,
I
good
feel
point.
like
Okay, yeah.
I know how to care for
Interesting.
their needs very easily. Yeah.
Yeah. Danielle, does it change things for you?
I would immediately choose the woman first just because I know how to connect with women very well. And it doesn't mean I can't connect with men either.
Mm.
But yeah, the first thing I thought when you mentioned a baby, I'm like, I would put a lot of attention on the baby and I would forget about taking care of myself if I was in that situation.
Mm.
So for me, I feel like that would make me extra vulnerable. So yeah, first I would choose woman, then man, then baby, and what? The next thing was bear?
Mm.
Or
Bear.
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So funny.
I feel
Yeah.
like
so
men and
interesting.
women are on equal par to me.
Mm. Okay. I wonder
Mm.
if it's like I'm in my head. I think a woman. I feel like I could take a woman in a fight, even though I'm only 5'1". I feel pretty confident, but I also feel confident I can outrun her.
You're
Yeah.
feisty, Brittany.
I
You
feel
got
like
that.
I
And a
am. Thank you
baby,
so much. I feel like
It's
I am
like
feisty.
I go into like care mode with a baby, not like a human. It's instantly like you're a strange human in the middle of somewhere I don't know. That's where all the unknowns come from. Baby, easy. I just care for your needs. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
that's true. Now, do you
Adult
guys?
humans are like,
There's
yeah.
so much. Well, okay, so the adult human process is like the communication. Someone said, if you end like, because a few men were pretty offended at this question. I don't think it's inherently offensive, but okay. So, and hypotheticals are dangerous because if you're not with a safe group to have a hypothetical with, they're going to take it personally, which is why I'm very cautious about who I do hypotheticals with. Because again, for me, it's like exploring your mindset and what you're thinking about, not like people aren't supposed to take it personal. But I wondered if you chose, like someone said, well, if you choose a man, at least you can communicate with him. But in my lived experience, that's what makes it so scary is even though he's a human, you would think we'd be able to communicate. That's why when you can't get through to a man when you're talking to him, it becomes instantly so terrifying because you're like, oh my God, like you're not clicking with me. Like you don't see me. Like I see your eyes and you are not witnessing me. And we're like, I'm about to get in trouble. And versus a bear, at least it feels like, I mean, I do kind of think you can communicate with animals. So part of me is like, if I can't communicate with this animal, I'd feel less personal about it maybe than if another human was like, yeah, I'm still not going to acknowledge your humanity and I'm going to ruin your life today. Then I'd be like, oh man, like that feels so much more terrifying to me than a bear ruining my day. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah. I can see that being an influence in why a lot of people would choose the bear because like if you are thinking kind of along those lines, it is not difficult to communicate with the bear necessarily, right? Like you could, if it's like a black bear, aren't you supposed to like make yourself big and like you don't want to run because then they're gonna chase you. So like you're communicating, you want to communicate that you're not a prey species. And so there are like ways that you can do that. I kind of feel like if I were to be lost in the woods trying to figure my way about and I see like a bear off in the distance and I like, am able to make myself big and loud or whatever, and it kind of like goes on its way. In my mind, I'm probably not going to be like, oh shit, that bear is going to come back for me later and fucking eat me while I'm asleep. Versus if I see a man across a field in the distance and we don't interact, he just like looks at me. For the rest of the time that I'm in the woods, I'm going to be like, oh shit, where is that man? Is he following me? Like, is he watching me? And I don't know, maybe that's not a logical thought process, but in the ignoring sense, I don't necessarily feel like the man would actually leave me alone if he ignored me. Whereas I feel like the bear, if it moves on, I don't think it would come back.
And I will add to it that a lot of people, like Harmony just did here and I did here, like we are all thinking of very specific scenarios in our mind. So some men heard the thought question and automatically thought like I come across hikers all the time. And I was like, they're not going to be hikers. It's going to be you and a random man in the middle of the forest. And I was like, oh, are you imagining a hiker? Because like that's even different in its own context. Like if it's just a normal camper, who cares? But if it's me transported in the middle of a forest and another man randomly on the planet transported in the middle of a forest, that's what I kind of saw it as. So how much of that is playing a role in your guys' answers?
It is. I've thought of the Mixie, like randomly we get magically transported. And that is what I took into account for my answer, because I do think that even though there is a chance that the randomly selected man is the next Jeffrey Dahmer serial killer, the chances of that are slim compared to the chance that the bear I encounter will be aggressive towards me. I think the reason that so many people have negative encounters with men, in my opinion, is because of how many men we encounter on a day-to-day basis. If we were encountering like the one of the TikToks you sent, I'm gonna try to reword it, but if we were to encounter a bear every day on our way to the grocery store, we would probably see a lot more bear attacks than we do now, right? So I think it's probably safer to go with a random human being, even if it is a man.
Interesting.
Just on average.
Interesting that you said Jeffrey Dahmer, because I was just imagining like the average Christian man, and I was like, they be raping out here. Like, but like my bias.
You really think the average Christian man is gonna rape someone if they come across them
I
in the
don't
woods?
think they think of it as rape. I think they think of it as an opportunity.
The average
You guys
Christian?
watch.
Really?
Whoa.
Well,
That is wild to me. I totally disagree.
but
with
I think
that.
the data kind of shows that given an opportunity, and from the feedback I get from men, I was taught by men that men are the worst predator because men are, yes, they want to protect you, but also they see opportunities. So in my brain, even the men I've known, and I told you guys I did this radio show once and for a promo, and like there were men who openly admitted they would assault women if they thought they were going to die because they figured it's my last chance to get women, and those were Christian men. So a part of me is like not going to put it past the men. If right now men are justifying and they see men being taken to court for these reasons and they don't believe these men did that to these women, then yeah, I kind of do think the average guy doesn't know that he's breaking consent. I think he doesn't think of it that way. But the
I don't
person
know, as
Mhm.
like someone who deals with men and like a sex worker and
Yeah.
in an criminalized, industry, that like I have come across a lot of like dangerous people, like I just like I've also come across mostly good people,
Yeah,
and
I mean
I feel
same,
like
right? But good
like well,
people be breaking consent,
in sex work you're more likely to come across the worst of the worst.
but not the
Look at all the
average.
true crime. Who do they kill? They kill sex workers. You know
Sure,
what I
sure, sure,
mean?
sure.
If we're talking survival sex work, if we're talking any kind of like lower rates type of situation, yes, you do. And even those people like that I come across, the ones who I can tell, like every fiber in my being, I'm like, you're a dangerous person. You know what I mean? Like
Mm.
Interesting. I'm not
I
taking
still like
Yeah. Tell me.
was able to, I don't know, come out of it alive. You know what I mean? Like there's some kind of connection to the humanity there that like I just think that it is really like no wonder men are mad if that's really what you think. You know what I mean? If you think that the average man really would rape a woman if they could get away with it, like no wonder men are mad.
Well, I just don't think they
You
think
know?
it's rape, right? If you listen to men talk about women, and generally speaking, and you hear the way they promote and support men who are right now being targeted as possible like a predators, I don't think the men think of it as that way. And I have a lot of really good experience with men. Most of the men in my life are really good, but they're also the people who taught me to be afraid of men. And so the question isn't like, do I think this of average men? Do I think average men are capable of doing something they don't process as rape? Yeah. Like I'm not saying they're malicious. I'm saying they don't even know that pressuring a woman or holding her down isn't her playing a game. They think of it as like, I don't think they're processing it as rape, is what I'm saying. I think a lot of men who interact with women think the no is a part
I
of the
see.
game, or they don't
Yeah.
think about it. And so I think they could justify it in their mind in a way. I
Yeah.
wouldn't put it past
I
them.
think I've had encounters with people like that as well. It's like, okay, in a different like if a different person had this experience, they probably or they might, yeah, like this
I
man doesn't understand what he did.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure, sure.
that kind of, and I keep bringing up this movie because I think it does it so well, but 10 Cloverfield Lane, check it out. Love that movie. But that movie, I think, really represents well the type of man that Brittany's talking about, where he thinks he's being a protector. He
Right.
thinks he is, benefiting the woman in some way, and he thinks he is owed
So
something.
we're talking average man with average woman.
Maybe, but I still don't. I think that movie, or I think what you're talking about, Brittany, is definitely a category of man.
For sure.
But what also I think that movie represents really well is the average man, which is just kind of like there, maybe has a crush on the girl, maybe doesn't, isn't really pressuring her, So I do think it depends on what category we're talking about. And I think if we take, this gets really complicated though when we talk on a global scale, what sorts of values and,
Right.
different cultures can we come
Well, that's what
across.
I'm thinking, right?
Yeah, if you pick from a random pool, you're probably going to get a man from China or India.
Right.
And, what cultural differences are there, and you're there in the woods. What kind of communication gaps are going to happen and misunderstandings. That being said, I don't think that the average, I think what you're talking about is maybe like the pressuring, right? The coerciveness,
Right.
the, oh, come on, like,
Yes.
like I'm
Yeah.
protecting you in this forest, like
Yeah,
we
yeah,
might
yeah.
die.
Like
Don't
we
you
might
want to,
die, like this is our last
yeah,
chance, like, that kind of guy. Well, and again, what is the
yeah.
average? Like if you look at all the replies from the
Mhm.
men that were upset who said like I'm a good guy, are those the average men? Because I wouldn't want to be in a forest with any of them. They were so angry. They feel like exactly the kind of guys that would take advantage of the situation.
See, I wouldn't mind just letting a man have a good time with me at the end of the world.
Yeah,
I
well,
really
it's not
wouldn't.
the end
If
of
he
the
was a
world
good
though.
person,
Well, that's the problem is
Oh,
like I
like,
wouldn't. That's what I'm saying. So you would be open to it, but what if the woman is absolutely not open to it, and the man is like, "Why aren't you open to this? We might die." That's what I'm worried
right.
about. Is the
That's
kind of
the
man.
average. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the average woman.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
hmm
Thoughts?
Have you guys?
Mhm.
This is kind of a silly correlation, so bear with me. Do you
Yeah.
guys watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia? Anyone?
Yeah, I love
Seen
that
it,
show.
yeah.
I love
Okay.
it.
It's been a
Yeah,
while.
love it. Yeah.
So they're like talking about the implication
Yes.
of being on a boat.
Yes,
Right?
yes,
This feels
yes.
very similar, right?
Yes.
So there's like if you're a woman on alone with a man on a boat in the middle of the water, there could be the implication of danger should you not want to sleep with him. And I feel like this is very similar
Yes.
in
I
the
see,
forest
yeah.
situation.
Yes,
I feel like
exactly.
there's a heavy
There's a
implication
pressure.
I'm
happening
afraid of
here.
Dennis. I'm worried about I'm worried about that average.
Yeah.
And I am worried about the 1 in 20 or even the statistics of like who and how assault happens. Like I'm worried about like if we're talking about I don't even know what average guy we're all imagining, but I would say that the men in my life are exceptional and they are not average men because they are the ones who are not going to cheat on their wives. They are the ones who are trying to be honest. They are the ones who are not going to put women in situations where the woman feels pressured. And I would argue that that is exceptional given the way we all have stories, given the way people tell stories, given the way we've even had Andrew Huberman in the news recently, where like men just are like, and not men in general, there's billions and billions of men, guys. I'm not talking about every man here. But if we took from a pool of which man would end up in the forest with me, probably not one of the ones who might, respect the boundaries, but maybe I get a gay one. Maybe I get the homosexual and I'm doing okay. You know what I mean?
I think
do
that
wonder-
it's also very interesting. Oh, so sorry. You go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I do think what's interesting about, how many stories we hear of being victimized, it's that a lot of the time predators don't stick with one victim, right? So they'll, victimize multiple people and then it ends up everybody has a story. That being said, Brittany, you are right in that a lot of men will talk about, how awful men are to women and kind of contribute to the fear that a lot of women have of men. And I don't think it's an unfounded fear. I think it's good to be cautious. Before Madam Jen forgets her thought, I'm going to pass it on to her.
Actually, that was the perfect tie-in, and I'm glad that you said that because I was going to say it's always really interesting to me that if we look at the Venn diagram of men who get upset about this kind of dialogue, and men who feel that they wouldn't want their daughter to come across a strange man, or they're the same type of men who are like, my daughter's not dating anyone until she's 21, and like, all those jokes around like, I'm gonna greet someone with a shotgun when he pulls up, and like these sorts of things. Like clearly these men are acknowledging the fact that there is a danger to women, or that's generally something that's like a high risk for women, at least, because sorry, I just bumped my camera, you guys, I apologize. But I think it's funny that the fathers who feel that way frequently overlap and are the same men who also get angry about this dialogue.
Well, okay. Also, I was thinking, is the average man would it is that like taking consideration like half the population? Is the average man like okay with trans women using bathrooms? Because like those are the same men that are worried about trans women in bathrooms because they think of trans women as like biologically male. And so again, I'm going off of what men are telling me about men and a lived experience, obviously, but I'm also going off data. So again, I'm not saying choosing a man is a bad answer. Choosing the man is the good answer. You might get a good man. Choosing a bear is a good answer. You might get a good bear. I'm just saying it depends on the person and what they're thinking of. So again, I always thought my brain went straight to worst case scenario for both. And I still think the bear is the better answer in a worst case scenario. But maybe that's not how everyone's thinking, right? So any answer is the right answer in my head to this hypothetical. But obviously, it's so funny how, like, again, dangerous a hypothetical is, because people will be like, I can't believe you just said that. And I'm like, okay, are we like sharing ideas or not? Like, am I allowed to express like my thought process or not? Because again, I think any answer is probably the right answer. It tells you what you think you could like win against, or the probability of what you might be up against is, So that's where my brain goes, right? Worst case scenario, I still choose the bear.
At least with the bear, in the worst case scenario, I feel like I would die quickly, where I don't know that would be the case with the man.
Right.
Yeah,
In
that's
a
what I
worst
was gonna
case
say.
scenario
It really
situation.
it depends what you're trying to optimize for. Like I
Ooh.
just know myself. I know I'm optimizing. Am I saying that right?
Mhm.
Okay. For some reason it sounds
Yeah.
weird. I know I'd be optimizing for life and survival. And I feel like I know men well enough to know how to survive in that kind of situation. But if I got, even Steve Irwin eventually got killed, doing what he was an expert in. So
Sure.
there's always that
Right,
chance.
by a stingray.
I just don't know anything about bears at all. I know that if I had an angry bear in the forest, it's definitely death.
Mm.
Angry man, I might have a chance.
Oh, good point. Good. Okay, so how many of us in the worst
Uh,
case scenario are trying to survive that worst case scenario?
Right.
Right.
I would appreciate surviving, even if it comes with trauma. I'll work through it,
Sure.
and it'll be a journey. Yeah.
That's a great point, Harmony, because I didn't even think about that, because you know me, I'm just like, I'm gonna die either way, so I choose the quicker one. And the one with less
I'm not even
violence.
sure I exist, so
I'd
Like,
be
I
on
guess
the
I'm
same
bear
boat with
food,
Harmony.
Say that again, Danielle.
I was gonna say I'm on the same boat with Harmony. I feel like I would have a higher chance being with the worst case scenario men because, due to my past experience as an exotic dancer, my persuasive skills have increased and my acting skills
And your
have increased to
intuitive
get my
skills,
way.
I bet your intuitive
Yes.
skills too. I bet, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely, yes.
To
Such an
sense
interesting
what the man
conversation.
actually is wanting and needing. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Or playing into it, even though it
Like I'm telling you, I
Yeah.
am so good at that. I am so yeah. Anyway, I'm just very
I do
confident. I'm very
wonder,
confident.
worst case scenario with a man, though, and this is why I'm teetering on worst case scenario for bear, is that the man is completely unresponsive, like to
What I'm thinking in
That's what
worst
I'm
case
worried about.
scenario.
Me too.
Yeah,
I'm
if all
thinking
he
about
wants
dead
to
in
do
the
is be
eyes.
violent, yeah. If all he wants
Yeah.
is violence, then yeah. Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
but at
why
that point, he's equal to a bear to me.
Oh,
If a man cannot be reasoned with, he is equal to an animal.
I see
that's
that. I
a
see
my-
good
that.
point.
That's kind of where I was thinking too. Like, worst case scenario, he is going to be like an animal, but he's going to probably torture and play with me a lot longer than the bear would. So I would rather be killed outright by a bear if we're looking at two angry animalistic beings.
Maybe because there has been a case. I read this infamous case. I don't know if you guys know it, about a bear who took a man into his cave for like 30 plus days.
Holy shit!
lot
So
of-
maybe
a lot of-
I'm completely
yeah, a lot of predators actually-
mistaken. I
So-
didn't.
Yeah,
Wow.
a lot
I
of predators prefer to keep their prey fresh.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
okay, I like that your guys' brains go to like survive the situation. My brain goes, how do I die the quickest? Bear. And I would aggravate that bear so it kills me the fastest. Like, I love how all of you are like trying to survive this forest. I'm just like, nah, I'm good, bro. Like, I'm just trying to die the quickest. But I love that perspective because, like, yeah, now, of course, like, ultimately, if I thought best case scenario, well, then I'd be thinking survival. I just don't think I'm gonna, like, my brains just can't imagine me surviving a bear attack or a man attack. I just think my lived experience tells me, like, I'm not gonna get out of this unless they both get bored with me. Then I could crawl my way out of that forest for sure, bro.
I do think it's actually an interesting point too, like how much the men in our lives contribute to kind of this thought process, right? Like, and they're coming at it from a male perspective, right? So you could argue, oh, women become paranoid because of a couple of bad experiences or whatever. You could, make that argument, oh, you disregard what they're saying. But then why would men bring out this sort of messaging to their daughters, to their, the young women in their lives? what is the benefit of that? Is the benefit of that now you get to enact this control over these women? Like, no, don't go out there and find these other men. I'm the good man. That's the worst case scenario. Or the man is actually speaking from experience and wisdom and knows how to evaluate a man's character, and is trying to pass on that wisdom to their daughters and young women to empower them. I'm going to bring that word up, to empower them to be able to judge a man's character on their own when they are ready.
Yeah, it makes because I have 8 brothers, right? And I have a dad. And ultimately, when I went on my solo road trips around the US, my dad was worried about men much more than bears, but we prepared for both. And even when I was alone in the forest and I was having like so much fear around it, ultimately, like I just prayed I never saw a man. I didn't care so much about the bear, and I'm pretty sure I had a run in with a bear, big animal outside my tent, unsure of what it was. Okay. All I know is I let it pass by and I didn't interact with it. I never saw what it was. It was pitch black at night. But all I know is like in my brain, I just like, don't be a man. Don't be a human being. On one of my road trips, I did in Oklahoma during a tornado storm, took shelter at this like RV park and made eye contact with this man. And I felt like every fear of God inside my body, and I don't even believe in God. And I was like, oh, this man is serial killer. This man 100% does not see my humanity, does not know me, does not see me. There's no human in this man. And everyone else I made eye contact with, I met so many strangers. They were all so nice. But even on that road trip, one of the biggest suggestions I got on both my road trips was take a pair of man shoes with you, take an extra chair, tell people you have a husband or a fiance, say you were with a man, do never let anyone know you were traveling solo as a woman. And it was interesting because obviously I did that to test myself, to see how confident I was in myself. And then of course, every time I was in a moment where I was interacting with strangers, I had to use my intuition. Like Harmony said, I had to use my knowledge of people to say, like, is this person a bad person? How's this feeling? There were times that people would knock on my camper in middle of wherever I was and be like, oh my gosh, your camper's so cute. Can I see it? And in those moments, you're kind of thinking like, what do I do here? Am I so socially supposed to say, like, of course, we're all campers and we're just hikers, right? Like, this is innocent. Or is this the guy staking out my fucking RV to see if there's another person with me? And, like, I couldn't tell half the time because it was men and women and old people. And again, it's like you're hopping into this camping culture bubble, which is, like, very friendly, and you're sharing goods and you're trading food. But then what if one of the people I met along the way was actually, like, just one of those people looking for an opportunity? It's like you never know. So look, I think humans are animals. And so the question is, do you want the animal bear or the animal man? And that's really the question. It's not like I'm looking at the man like he's less of an animal. Like I think we're evolved animals. Like I believe in evolution. So that's also a part of the conversation that I think is probably different for other people. Because if you think you come from God and you think like you're made in his image, you might think like you're going to meet a man of the cloth or a man of the spirit, versus I'm just thinking like man the animal. I'm not really like, you know what I mean? What do you guys think?
But then we are also an animal, right? Like the man, the animal is encountering the woman, the animal in
for
the
sure.
story. And animals of the same species have a better, especially like as a social species like humans, there's more of a chance, especially in a survival situation, of cooperation. So yeah, I definitely see again where you're coming from, especially traveling solo as a woman. There's a lot more safety considerations that we have to take into account. So yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I do wonder, like, if we were faced for real with the choice and we got to see the image of who will end up in the forest with us, and there's an image of like a bear, and you can like almost feel yourself like transported it like near it, and you could feel the ground shaking as it like walks and whatever, versus you see an image of the guy that works at your local grocery store. Who are you picking? And you don't know the guy at the grocery store. He could be the biggest psychopath of all time. But does seeing a specific image, if I say guy at your local grocery store, we all can see the guy at our local grocery store, right? Does having that specific image change anybody's answers?
Mm-hmm. Which bear am I looking at? Am I looking at a cute little black bear?
No,
Is it a
you're
bear
looking
black
at
bear.
grizzly bear.
Kodiak.
California,
Kodiak.
California grizzly.
Yeah.
Yeah, the image of the bear was harder to come up with, right? Okay, you're looking at cocaine bear. If you've seen those posters.
Oh.
See, honestly, that question, the way that you presented it too, like if like we had the embodied experience, if we were able to preview like the embodied experience of whichever one we chose, like that is okay. To me, that's getting at something where the divide is maybe between men and women who see this question, because I really think that men, what they lack in understanding of how many women choose the bear is they lack the embodied understanding of what it is to be, quote unquote, the weaker species in this situation. Like we have this embodied sense of danger that's just a part of our existence. Like we have to consider these things. We have to like take these things into account, and they don't have any sense for that. They're just looking at how to control the world and take it over and do things and make things, and we're actually like, no, we have to feel safe. I think that's where a lot of the divide comes from.
I would say, what's interesting is hearing from the men that were upset women chose the bear. The men chose the men. They're like, guys, you can't choose a bear. You're not going to win against a bear. And I was like, I'm not going to win against a man either, bro. Like, I'm probably not. Like, realistically, like my little brothers, like, I can't even explain to you how much power is in their bodies. Like, they will just grab my arm and I'm like, ow. You were just holding on to my arm, sir. And I'm like, sir. So in my head, just in my own experience, I'm 5'1" and 130 pounds, girls. Okay, I might lift weights, but I don't lift weights that are that heavy. Okay, and so I really think if I was alone in the forest, fuck it, I'd be chilling as fuck. Like I'd get out of there no problem. I could survive the fuck out of a forest. But if there's a predator, whether it's a man or a bear, like, girl, I don't even think I could beat up a 20-year-old little twink of a man. You know what I mean? I'm sitting here like, I don't even know if I could take you. I know I joke a lot that I could take everyone in a fight, but I'm being very realistic. Like, if that man wants to, like, I'm fucked. And so I don't even want to pretend or play some game. In the same way that, like, men are mad when women are like, I could beat you up. It's like, yeah, bro, I'm not going to beat you up or the bear. So if I'm going to lose, I'm going to lose to the bear because I feel like he'll kill me faster and without rape. I really feel like that's the best case scenario.
Without the use of like detailed tools. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But
we're like tool using primates. Like there's so much. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think the men do know that they would also lose to the bear. That's why they choose the other man, because they think, well, if I have to fight a man, I could take a man maybe. So we're all making the best case decision for us as people. And the fact that people are getting offended about it is probably the thing that surprises me the most, except I think people are probably just weak-spirited or something. I don't need to question why you choose the best case scenario for you, bro. You're choosing the best case scenario for you. I respect that. The fact that they can't mutually respect other people's like choices is like weird to me.
Yeah. Right. I've seen a lot of men say that women are just wrong,
right,
in the choice that they make, which to me proves my point about them just having a lack of empathy for the embodied nature of a woman. Because of the fact that we feel danger on a daily basis.
I do actually wonder about, and this kind of goes to the nature versus nurture. This was a discussion in my household about, like child marriages and stuff like that. And I was thinking, my initial thought, and maybe this was my unending optimism, but I was like, I'm pretty sure most normal men, like grown men, would prefer a grown, fully developed woman to a 12-year-old girl, right? To, copulate with. And it became this whole discussion of, okay, well, things were done for political reasons, and probably if you were a peasant, you just got married for love. It wasn't like a political thing. Marriage being a political contract was more so for the upper classes and blah blah blah. But then a man in the conversation actually said, well, they didn't think of women like people back then. So they just thought they could do whatever they wanted. And then I was like, oh, well, this is making me question this is now making me question the, I guess, quote unquote, humanity of men. if that is the case, because I would like to have faith in that the men 500, 600, whatever years ago weren't so different to some of the men that I encounter now, in that they're leading normal lives, they're doing their best, they are treating, women as people, to whatever that means within the culture, right? And so that's also an interesting discussion of the nature versus nurture, like how much of what we expect, or expect from men's behavior is based on the nature, or if does that make sense? Does my question make sense? Like, do we
Yeah.
think 500 years ago most men, heterosexual men, would be like, yep, I'd prefer an adult woman versus oh, I could go for a 12-year-old?
Well, I do think epigenetics does come into play heavily, because I see the way that men and women are so divided is like a result of the patriarchy, which is a result of trauma from years and years and years and years ago. So I do see how epigenetics plays a role, and we know that trauma changes our actual DNA, down the line, and we get into these feedback loops and cycles of patterns of existing. And anyway, I see where it comes from, and I think men have a harder time, just because of the way things have emerged, with facing the more embodied / emotional realities.
Well, I think another thing that plays a role in that too is also the belief. So I would say the average person doesn't believe in epigenetics. I would say the average person doesn't believe in, like, I would say the average person isn't very educated. I would say the average person isn't considering consent. I would say the average person, man or woman, isn't really thinking about their own dignity, because they're probably not allowed to globally. Like, I'm thinking globally. If this is like, if you told me, like, oh, out of all the LGBT men in the group, you'll end up with that or a bear in the forest, like, I'd choose the queer people, because, like, even if we're gonna fight, it's gonna be glitter heaven. Like, I would at least have a little bit of fun with it, man, but also could run the risk of physical violence or sexual violence. But see how they're a different category of people? Like, we're all different. We're even genetically, like, they're saying gay people are coming out differently than straight people, and a lot of that is genetics. And, like, I think that's so interesting, but not everyone believes in that. There are people who literally don't even believe in, like, trauma being passed down, or people having so the issue is, like, which person am I more likely to end up with in the forest? The person who is going to be considerate and, like, educated, or the person, and I don't mean like academically educated, I just mean like in terms of humanity, or am I going to end up with the person that contributed to the gang rape of a couple recently in India, and I'm going to end up being like with those, like, who am I going to be with? And so that's the scary thing, is like, am I going to be with the person that, like, who am I going to be with? And I don't know if the globe is universally updated. You know what I
No,
mean?
true. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, I have an understanding how wounded humans act, how traumatized humans act. I've participated in my own trauma and the healing of my trauma. I have a visceral, embodied understanding of how traumatized humans act. And that gives me an understanding of how dangerous they are, and maybe how to move in that arena. Even if they don't believe it, I can still say, well, I know this pattern. And so because of that, knowing that pattern, it gives me information on how to move. You know what I mean?
For sure, for sure. Do you
Yeah.
guys think this scenario changes if we only talk about the best case scenario? Do you think this conversation even matters? Or do you think it only became viral because women chose the bear, because they were thinking for themselves, those individual women? Because some women chose a man, obviously. They were like, do you think there would have been discourse if everyone just, like, I mean, I think there would have been a conversation if everyone chose a man, to be honest, because that would have been interesting. But then, what do you think really contributed to this going so viral?
I think it's because of how many women have a salience landscape of men being scary. Oh, I think Danielle's internet went out.
Yeah, her phone might have gone.
But how many women have, experienced that and are now going through the world with that lens. And the women that were asked were, it seemed like, at least from the TikToks that I saw in the group chat, were women in the Western world, where, they were probably thinking of the worst men that they have encountered. And I do think it's tragic that so many women do have these experiences and are unable to, I guess, escape that negative salience landscape, whether it's because of their environment or because they've decided, well, this is, how the world is. So like for me, I completely empathize with, and in fact, like I struggle with this myself, where I have, a fear of strange men, especially in public. But at the same time, I recognize it's like it is almost like an animalistic fear, right? Like on an animal level, I'm scared, but if I want to move,
Well, that's what trauma is. It's when your
yeah,
animal nervous
yeah,
system is taking over. Yeah.
yeah. But then when
Mhm.
I actually look at the evidence of my life as it is now, the number of negative experiences has diminished when I changed my environment. So I do think the reason it became a conversation was because of, and I think this conversation has been recycled a lot too in different ways. So for example, the discourse of like not wearing shorts around male relatives, um, and things like that. There's always this discourse that comes up about how um, certain types of women, and or even most women have been traumatized by men in their lives, are struggling with that. So yeah, I think that's why. Because if everybody thought of the best case scenario, oh, it'd be actually discourse if everyone thought of the best case scenario and they still chose bear. That would be interesting. But it seems like people chose bear because they thought of the worst case scenario.
What would be the best case scenario in your guys' mind? Because I gave mine, but I'm not sure that would be the universally best case scenario.
Yeah, I think it's the same as yours. We'd work together. We'd come across a man, and we'd work together to get out of the forest together.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Best case
Same.
scenario is I come across
Yeah.
my fiance in the forest.
And the
Yeah.
ultimate best case scenario.
I want to come
Yes.
across a survivalist who's got all the gear in his
Nice. Yeah,
backpack,
yeah, yeah.
an extra sleeping bag.
Yes.
Yeah, it isn't interesting like how our brains take us to places, and I'm sure that's what also even earlier when I said average man and I saw the chat freak out for a second. Well, what are we all imagining? Because like I don't know about you, but like even like in my family, sexual deviancy is, and I say extended family because I have so many relatives, like so many. I mean, my grandma was married at 12. My aunties were married at 16. There is absolutely sexual abuse in the history of my family legacy. And like, even to this day, like, my brother doesn't let men babysit his kids, even like family members, unless there's a woman there, because he just has like, he's like, no offense, it's been men. Like, when there's a female predator in the family, we'll start like watching out for women. But right now, it's been men, and it's been uncles, and it's been aunties, it's been people who were supposed to be the protectors. It's been godparents. It's been people that were supposed to be the protectors. So even my family is like suffering from that, like a legacy of trauma, right? Or in some cases,
Mhm.
it's been like homosexuals. And so it's like, oh, like they're, bias against LGBTs is like fueled by this knowledge that like, oh my gosh, like a gay person did. So again, a lot contributes to like trauma. And I think that's why every answer a person gives is probably more than valid, because we're speaking from our own learned experience. But I always wonder, like, because as I was hearing people give their responses, whether they chose a man or a bear, I'm like, this makes sense to me because you're choosing the best scenario. I wondered how much of the trauma is playing into the men getting offended that women would choose bears. Like, how traumatized are these men? How sick are men of feeling like, I'm sick of being seen as a predator? I'm not a predator. But then they get so angry, they mimic a predator. So then my brain is like, I'm not sure that you're not angry enough to hit me because you're frustrated with me now. What do you guys think about that?
It feels
I
in
definitely think
line.
it's trauma.
Yeah. It feels in line with like the not all men discourse, right? Because like, yeah, there are plenty of men who are not predators, but there are also plenty of men who are predators. So the getting so upset about that feels also dangerous. I agree.
Yeah, I think that okay, here's the thing, and so when I think of it, it's hard because I classify men and women sort of like along the maybe gender stereotypical lens of like masculine and feminine energy, right? So it's like broad generalizations, which is only so helpful in discourse, right? So I kind of realized that, but I see that men often that masculine energy is a sort of energy that it really kind of comes to the end of itself when it has to do the sort of like more emotional labor, emotional work. It doesn't it wants to like thingify their emotional experience. And so men that masculine energy doesn't quite know how to deal with the trauma.
Mm,
And that just kind of makes things worse. And because of the specific type of relationship that it is between the masculine and feminine, it's hard for them to be able to get in touch with that emotional wisdom
hmm.
because of the feedback loop that they're in because of the trauma. So it's a specifically like pernicious type of trauma that makes it very hard for them to get help
I could see
and get
that.
out of that loop. Mhm.
Before we go on, I do have a super chat from Sleeve T Rocks. I would have gladly offer my sleeping bag and canteen to any of you lovely ladies and would heroically fight off bear attacks. Jen's got a good one. Thank you from Sleeve. Anybody have any comments about what Harmony said or moving the conversation forward? And then I have a question. I just don't want to derail anyone's thoughts.
I just thought about how, and I've been thinking about this, and this thought is very undeveloped. So, if anybody would like to help me evolve it, I do wonder if a lot of men have their own kind of and a different kind of sexual trauma than women often do, in that their sexuality is often seen as and perceived as inherently disgusting or inherently predatory or you know from that perspective, or like they're inherently inconveniencing. Um i and it's hard for me to, I guess, imagine what that kind of looks like. But I also thought about, like, okay, what if everyone around you looked at you as if you were disgusting and about to attack, and and how that might contribute to especially a young boy's development and self-esteem. I do also imagine, though, that that kind of scenario would probably be more likely to happen in a very dysfunctional home, and coming from a place of trauma as well.
Mm.
And so I wonder if a lot of the discourse that we are seeing with the you know women choosing bear and then men getting upset with that, if it's two groups of traumatized people having that discourse, right?
Yes,
And yeah, so, but I wonder
I think
if
so.
calling it a type of sexual trauma is, if that makes sense,
Mm.
because it does have to do with their sexuality a lot of the time, I think.
Yeah, and I'm curious too, because I totally agree with this. I did see a lot of like hurt and pain from a lot of the men on TikTok. Like one man in particular kind of went viral and he was like very sad. And I was like, okay. But at the same time, it felt weird to have it be a question for women and then for men to center it on themselves. But also sometimes we don't know how to speak about our trauma unless we're given the opportunity. And so I don't know how they would have had that opportunity without women being asked the question in the first place. So I'm here to hear it. I do think it's interesting also what category, because I ended up with a male person, regardless of like, relationships with gender. Like, this is a male presenting person. And, him and I both agreed we choose bears or each other. So, unless we got lucky enough to get each other in the forest, we both kind of picked bears. And I think that's also interesting, is like, I didn't end up with a man that doubted, like, of course he's like, of course you chose a bear. Why would you choose a man? I was like, well, why would I choose anything? And so it's not that I'm saying it's the right answer. I'm never saying that. In this scenario, I don't believe in a correct answer. I'm just saying it's interesting that I ended up with the category of man who also understood why I chose the bear and didn't even question it. Like, of course you did. Versus somebody else who's like, who maybe would have been a man who would have been like, what the fuck? Why'd you choose a bear? Like, why would you choose a bear? You know, he didn't even think to make it about him. It didn't even cross his mind that when I said no to a man, he ever thought of himself. But then again, we don't really adhere to gender in the same way that other heterosexual presenting couples do. So in our defense, gender doesn't play a role in our marriage. So I think
I
that
do
played a role.
I do wonder, did you present the woman, man, baby, bear scenario to your partner, and what
He
did he say
did.
to
He's
that?
the one. No, he's the one who asked me that
Oh,
question.
he
'Cause
came up with it.
yeah,
Okay.
he came up with that
Nice.
question. So I've been asking. Yeah, so that's his question to me. He's like, "Well, what if we actually had to choose between?" And we both said no to babies. Yeah, we were both like, "No babies, no responsibility."
I was like, yes.
Yeah, we're like, we're not taking care of no baby over here.
The
Okay.
autist in me is like, I don't want to deal with adult humans. No, I know how
Yeah.
babies work.
Yeah. Now, I don't want to give his answer away because that's his answer. But even for me, I think I
Okay.
would choose a woman in that scenario, right? Because it would just make sense to me. But then that's me playing to my. Again, I think everyone's just playing to their own favor, which I think is the smartest way to answer the question instead of
Yeah.
making it about other people.
Yeah, that's weird to me too. When you ask an opinion question and then say that there's a right answer to it. That's a whole different issue. And a lot of men were actually totally invalidating women by saying that they were giving the wrong answer,
See, I want to know
which
where
is
that's from. Where does
interesting.
that come from?
Yeah.
Like, are you personalizing it? Are you internalizing it? Like, what are you doing? You know?
This is going to get me off on a tangent, but it's because that masculine energy that wants to grasp everything, because the grasping right answer, wrong answer, black, white, that shit is the same fucking shit that gets us bridges and airplanes and roads and buildings and everything that we have. It's a fucking powerful adaptive tool that humans have. And so our brains think that that's like the only way to exist and the only way to know things. It's self-deception.
Interesting.
The feminine energy is about the being, the knowing through being, about the being mode. Yeah, and that's why we have, I think, conflict between the feminine and the masculine energy.
Interesting. Okay, I could
But
see
again,
that.
that's a tangent.
I mean, I
Yeah.
could see that. I could see that. Danielle, I gotta say, you look like you're vibing, girl. You look like you're vibing.
I am. I'm very much intrigued with this whole conversation. Like, you guys explored areas that I didn't think that deep enough about. So I find this very intriguing. Yeah, there was a moment I was in the car and the phone just overheated. I'm like, okay, I'm going to stay in the wind.
We figured as
It
much.
worked out.
We appreciate you being with us. I know you have to eventually go, so you just let me know when that is. But we're happy to have
I
you
will
here.
definitely let you know.
Okay, perfect.
I'm very intrigued with this conversation.
Yeah, no, me too. Go ahead, Arena. I see you unmuting yourself.
Yes, I was going to say what Harmony brought up about the masculine versus the feminine is actually some of what Danielle's work is. So I was actually wondering if Danielle could expand on that and on bridging that conflict or communication gap. How would that, look like?
Yeah, well, thank you for bringing that up. So the way how I teach masculinity is like real masculinity is about protecting and knowing how to hold a frame and structure. And then the femininity, we're very flowy and like Harmony said, we're the being, and that femininity is what makes life interesting. But also to your point when you talked about how the masculine, they just want to be right, they're problem solvers. It's funny because even though I'm in a same-sex relationship, my partner is super masculine, and when we do butt heads, I notice she she kind of acts like a classical guy where she's just trying to get the right thing, she's just trying to understand, and I'm like, no, I just need you to feel what I'm saying. So it's interesting how these energy present themselves.
Yeah.
I do wonder though also about bringing the conversation to empowerment, coming from a place, growing from trauma, growing as in you're coming out of trauma.
Like
I do
post-traumatic
wonder about,
growth.
how there are healthy ways to lead any number of lives, whether you do take, the masculine and feminine into account into your life or not. I think I'm not sure about Jen, but I know for my relationship, we don't really believe in that for us. But I know that there are healthy ways to have, traditional relationships and unhealthy ways. Um, and so I think that's really where we find empowerment, is probably finding what's healthiest for us. But how do we know that something is healthy for us or not?
I would say getting genuinely curious with each other, knowing what really works for each individual and what your actually needs, like just being genuinely curious and not making assumptions.
Is that healthy as a couple or healthy as a person?
I'd say healthy as a person.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely not making assumptions is super important there, because whenever we assume something about the other person, we more often than not are going to be incorrect, in my experience.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm answering,
I think
go ahead, Harmony. I'd love to hear your thoughts first.
I was just gonna say, I think for me, when I think of like what's actually like really healthy, there's definitely like a sense of balance. Something about balance there. If I like skew over to one extreme or something, it starts to feel a little bit unhealthy. And so there's something about balance that feels healthy, and there's so many different aspects of being human. So balance in all those aspects.
I 100% agree with that. Like, I think that if I'm talking about myself specifically, or even in relation to other people, I think it is about embodying that balance. And when I notice myself getting out of balance, I notice a need to correct myself or my behavior or my thought process or whatever it is. Even if you go something like simple, like food, water, and sleep, it's like you can feel when you haven't had something, like, oh, okay, like I'm missing out on that healthy balance. And then, of course, I do ultimately, from a philosophy perspective, think that like your joy plays into that, leading towards, an everyday like fulfillment, like feeling, especially compared to the me in my 20s, like, oh my gosh, girl, talk about like I've been waking up every day happy for the last like 4 years, or joyful or at peace or feeling good about my choices. Brittany in her 20s, she was in turmoil every day. It was like waking up every day and knowing you are out of balance. Like you are so out of balance, you don't even know if you're gonna, you're gonna wake up tomorrow out of balance. And so to be in balance, now, and then, even when I deviate from it, I always think like we can't be perfect because like that's not going to happen. So it's like I notice myself swaying, and if I notice, I just
Hmm.
try to like, in yoga
Same
today.
metaphor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we did yoga today. We were practicing one-legged, I don't know what they're called, but like this position where we had one leg up, and I was like, "Oh fuck." And I was like balancing, and I felt it in that moment. I was like, "Oh, this is a good analogy for like keeping balance." It's very difficult and it's never going to be perfect. So it's like, okay, if I'm swaying, I'm trying to like at least either be in sync with what's happening so I'm not fighting the tide, or to find the balance so it doesn't matter how crazy the tide is, to use a little metaphor. But I agree with Harmony. I think it's
Well,
about
and
that
even
balance.
even with the swaying thing too, like even like this is a practice I do in my meditation, like finding your center, you balance,
Mm,
you sway over to feel the embodied sense of what it actually feels like in your body when you're off balance. You know what I mean? So that
mm,
when you're balanced, you know what it feels like.
mm-hmm.
And so I think that's kind of like what life is. You're always kind of like, oop, a little too far, oop, a little too far, back this, and you're just kind of like, yeah, like swaying
Agree,
like that. Yeah.
agree, agree, agree.
It's a helpful metaphor.
I know exactly which yoga pose you're talking about. I do struggle with that, and I have to sway back and forth, and that is a really helpful comparison. I can just like already feel that in my body.
Mm-hmm.
For me, when I discover something that's healthy for myself, it feels like the brain and body align in a sense. So, for example, yesterday my fiance gave me a massage, and often I'm like, no thank you, I don't need a massage. But last night I was like, all right, let's do this. And he gave me a proper massage. Like, we turned on some of the yoga ambient music, turned down the lights, and he did that. And what was interesting about last night was, prior to the massage, I literally felt, I was stressed about something, and I literally felt my neck tense up. I literally felt the tension begin. And that I've never noticed that before. I'm always like, oh, my neck's so tight, my shoulders are tight, and also I'm stressed about something. And a lot of people talk about how stress contributes to your body and how it can affect your body. But it's so different when you put two and two together for yourself versus hearing it from someone else. And so it I had this thought while I was getting the massage, and I was like, this feels healthy. I'm getting a massage from someone I love. It's helping me release this tension physically and also mentally. And so I that's what I think about when I think about health, is like the alignment between mind and body, not going too much one way or the other, which you guys brought up as the idea of balance. But yeah, that was interesting. And so now I added another healthy practice into my repertoire of what I believe are the healthiest practices for me. But it was interesting, I guess, observing myself realize that something was healthy for me. And then the previous time that happened was when I started like rock climbing, and I discovered, okay, this is my sport. This is what I'm going to do to move my body. So yeah, there was almost like these like points of like click, and then like the other time, like when I find new recipes and I start cooking, for the whole week or whatever, and click, that's also healthy. I'm going to go ahead and put that, like collecting these tools to build an overall healthier life that I assume I'll be collecting for the rest of my life. And they might change as I age and as my body changes.
Do you guys have a sort of like a moment where you like I know you gave us that prompt in the Discord about that BDSM couple. I tried to think of, it's hard to explain it to the audience because it's so tangent, but something that I thought was interesting was how do you go from being in a healthy situation to being so unhealthy? Because it feels like my life was unhealthy to healthy, and it feels like how could I ever go back to being unhealthy if I've broken the pattern? But then I see these couples who end up in situations where it's like relatively healthy, and then something deviates and it becomes super unhealthy. Or you hear about the person who had a pretty regular life, and then at 45 it's like and I have to assume partially it's introspection and partially it's that midlife crisis that we saw happen growing up a lot. 45-year-old man buys a Corvette and sleeps with his secretary because he never really realized what he was doing with his life. And I think, growing up in the internet, maybe we'll have a different opportunity. Like, I couldn't imagine myself having a midlife crisis because that would mean that I had ignored a part of my life, which I don't tend to do at this stage in my existence. I feel like my midlife crisis happened in my 20s and it was really big. And now I'm here, at 35 next month, and I'm realizing like I can't imagine I'd go back to my toxic habits. But I wondered, like, what does bring a person to go back? Is it like a relapse? Is it not changing truly a pattern? Is it like a brain aneurysm? Like, what is it? And how could you imagine it even happening at this stage in your life?
This got me to think of the Gottman University study where they talk about emotional bids. What tends to happen when couples fall apart from each other, or they grow apart from each other, is when they just stop caring about listening to what's going on in their day. So it just starts from there sometimes, and then you feel unheard, and maybe you let it get away for a while, and then you consistently let it get away for a while. Boom, it can go back to being unhealthy.
Yeah. And I love the
I'm sure
Gottman's
that's one
work.
way.
Yeah, I love the Gottman's work, and I love that idea of like bidding for affection or bidding like and I do that, I think, actively with my partner, where we try really hard to pay attention to the details. What are our differing hobbies? And even though I don't understand what he's talking about when he talks about D&D, I am an active listener, and I am trying to memorize what things are and understand how it works so I can ask like the good questions. But also I think I'm just excited to see him so excited, and like that really like, and same with my work, where he'd be like every day after stream, it's like, what'd you talk about on stream? How was it? Anything interesting? Tell me about your day. It's like and then every day is like a new day. Every day is a new opportunity. Like, I don't care how much I said I love you yesterday. Today is a new day to say I love you again. And now that the sun is out, we're doing our walks and we're socializing. We're just being us, and it's really nice. But we like to think of our relationship on a 24-hour cycle. So tomorrow's going to be a new day, and we're going to have new opportunities to say I love you, or to ask, what's your schedule today? What are your thoughts today? What's the theme for today? And I think that's a version of maintaining healthy, because I think an unhealthy relationship, I remember, oh my God, this is almost embarrassing now, but not really. It's a part of the journey. I remember being in relationships where I not only didn't like my partner, but I would try to avoid them because we were just bickering and fighting. And I was like, this is not good. And I remember thinking, like, is this my life? Like, is this what relationships are? And I kept thinking, like, this isn't what was modeled for me. This isn't my parents' relationship. Like, why am I in this relationship? And the truth is because I was unhealthy. I was unhealthy enough to pick those partners. I was unhealthy enough to like be in that side of my life and to be in that path. And so now that I'm on a different path, it feels like everything else makes kind of sense. Ooh, keeping in balance with what Harmony was said earlier, like keeping that balance is also keeping in tune with, I think, your values. And I think values play a huge role in the deviation between my toxic and my healthy self. Like, I don't
Do you
think my.
think?
Go ahead, Genevieve.
No, I'm sorry. You finish your thought first
Well,
because
I
I'm going
don't.
to ask a question that's a little
Okay, I don't
different.
know if my values would let me ignore my partner. Does that make sense? Like, I didn't still solidify my values till my 30, like when I was 30. And so I think everything I learned in my past relationships is like, I can't be two different people in a relationship in terms of values. So I don't think my values would let me ignore my partner's needs now, if that makes sense. So I think that's a huge change as well. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I was listening to what you were saying and then I totally lost my thoughts. So give me a second and maybe it'll come back to me. I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I was like doing my active listening and then I was like, shit, what the hell was I just going to say? I'm sorry.
We'll give it
It
a
might
moment.
come back and I'll let you all know if it does.
Okay.
No, I think someone else is going to have to say something and then I'll interject
That's okay.
down the road.
We'll do it. We'll do a call to silence unless Arena has something to say. It looks like you
I
unmuted.
yes. I was gonna say, I do wonder if you do fall back into unhealthy. Did you find what was healthy for you at the time truly in the first place? Because, like you're saying, Brittany, your values wouldn't allow you to do this unhealthy thing, right? If, for example, you've built a routine almost mindlessly that may look healthy, but that isn't backed by a foundation of values, then any sort of disruption could throw you off the path, off the healthy path, because you haven't built resilience or agility as a human, to respond to disruptive situations. Whereas, which I don't. I'm trying to think of what kind of person that would be. Maybe somebody that was very, very sheltered and their life looks like there's nothing going on, right? But they go to school, they have a job, everything's hunky dory, and then one day they come across somebody that betrays them or takes advantage of them, and that's their first big, their first big disruptor, their first big obstacle, that knocks them off their path. Then they'd have to probably go on that journey of going into the unhealthy and rediscovering what a healthy life actually looks like to them. So yeah, I do wonder, like, if we think of, yeah, like I'm trying to think, is there such a thing as a person who just completely leads a healthy life their whole life without rediscovering what a healthy life means to them, like from childhood until death? Is that a possibility?
That kind of spurred my memory here on what I was going to say earlier, in that, do you guys think this correlation would kind of play with the idea of a midlife crisis in previous generations? Because they mostly, and if we're looking at like obviously like American culture in specific, we mostly would see previous generations getting married younger, having like this family life, doing what was like more expected in their 20s to fit this certain mold. And then later on in middle age, they're kind of like, oh shit, I never got to live this like exploratory kind of lifestyle. Whereas generations now are like taking the time to maybe make some unhealthy decisions, but they're doing it earlier, so that it seems plausible to me that we will lose this concept of a midlife crisis because people are having more time to explore and try out unhealthy things and figure out what really is healthy when they're younger rather than having to like do it in reverse. Does that make sense?
It definitely is going to depend on the bubble for sure, but I would say that I hope that's the case in some ways. That people would, I've heard that Gen Z is having like a quarter life crisis, and that's pretty common.
Yeah. Instead of a
Yeah.
midlife crisis, it's like you're doing it at a quarter
That
life
seems to be the
instead.
new norm, especially with careers being, kind of difficult right now and the economy being difficult. It's like people are like, what am I doing? And I think Gen Z is probably experiencing something so different than millennials did. And so, good luck to them. But I definitely am not operating on that same wavelength, right? Like I just have all millennial information in my head with boomer information in my head. Like Gen Z is almost like an alien to me, which I love them. But yeah, I think that that's hopefully it. Now the question is like, how do you? Because I remember in my 20s doing therapy, which was great, definitely recommend. And I remember thinking like, okay, I figured it out. And obviously, I was like 2 years away from figuring it out for real. But I thought I was like really confident. I was like, oh, I got it
Mhm.
now, baby. And then I realized, oh no, I fucked up. I continued my pattern. I like took back an ex. I like did the bad thing, and I was like, oh, I didn't figure out my pattern. And then finally, about a year after therapy or 2 years, I don't remember. I have to look at my calendar. It hit me, and I was like, okay, we're breaking the pattern. And I like like cut it off, and I remember like starting over again, and it was the best decision I ever made. But I also knew that I was done for real. Like there's like a doneness. Now, I think when you go through something like that, at least you know how to do it. The question is how many people throughout their lifetime pick up that tool of knowing the difference between thinking you changed a pattern and knowing you changed a pattern. Because a lot of us, myself included, have deceived myself into thinking I changed the pattern only to fall back into it.
Well, see, I think that's so interesting because I like that you call it a pattern because that's what I was going to say. I see maybe health as like is a process, It's not this final finished thing. I don't think anything is with a human. We're just completely always unfolding and changing. We're always trying to refine that balance. So I do view health as like a process. And so like patterns are sort of like processes, right? And so I think just with any process, it starts with just little tiny little, okay, one thing in the unhealthy direction, and then you start to get a little feedback loop, and it gets stronger and stronger and more salient and more salient, and that's how it happens, right? It doesn't start as like, oh, I'm living this perfect healthy life, and then bam, salience landscape, whoosh, over here now. No, like I don't think that's how it happens generally,
Yeah.
Like
I agree.
sometimes, yeah, it's like a
Healing is
little
consistent
pattern.
practice.
Yes,
Mhm.
it is. It is. And that's how the like unhealthiness comes in too. Just like the healthy, it takes little tiny steps over and over, patterns, habits, get into the healthy, and it's the same thing with the unhealthy patterns. And I had something else I was going to say, but I forgot. So
Well, there's something that came up for me as you asked that amazing question, Brittany, and it had me think of a gentleman that I was trying to help recently. He reached out for advice because he's dating a younger woman and is also an exotic dancer, and I can tell he's incredibly in love with her. But I pay attention to everything that he says, like justifying, "Oh, she must care for me because she FaceTimes me every day." And yeah, one time I tried to take her out this one time, but then she brought her friend, and I'm like, oh no, you know. Um, I try to. What I've been telling him is just get very curious with her. What is she committed to in her life right now? What are her priorities? That's what you need to pay attention to. Just because I'm an exotic dancer and, I decided to be monogamous and I decided, to change my entire life around, it doesn't mean every exotic dancer is like that. You just got to really pay attention to who she is and what is she committed to in her life right now.
Yeah, I think
So, yeah, healing's a process. It's, yeah.
yeah, I agree with that too. I don't want it to ever sound like oh, I've arrived. Never fucked up
Right.
again.
Of
It's like,
course,
oh, look
yeah.
at me. I think what you do is like you get to the next level of the game, and so every time you hit a level, you don't go back to the previous level, but then you start from the bottom of the next level again. And so you're always like learning. And
Mhm.
then, gosh, I always wonder what menopause will be like because I hear it's quite a journey. I hear it's quite heavy on the body. There's a lot of changes, and I kind of like look forward to menopause in a way. And so I'm like, that's going to be a new journey of knowing my body and myself. And I wonder what kind of a different person I'll be. And you guys always hear me say, like, I can't wait to meet Brittany at 42. I just think she's going to be so cool. And I know she's not going to be this Brittany. So that's another thing is like, I'm not attached to this version of me, but that also, that means I will change. And so the idea is like to change in the healthier direction, to recognize that it's not perfection we're looking for, but hopefully we don't go back to those like, original beginning levels. Like hopefully we're not getting game over and going back to the beginning. Hopefully we're always, getting better and better. But I don't think it's linear. I think thinking linear is like it's like a hopeful dream, but I also think it sets like a standard that's so unfair to the human condition, right? So I definitely don't want to think of it that way. But I want to think of it, I like leveling up. I don't know, what do you guys like? Like what's the thing that you tell yourself?
I like the idea of leveling up or like moving in an upward trajectory, but knowing that it's not a straight line, right? Like ideally, the progress should generally be kind of going in an upward direction, but there's going to be bumps and dips and valleys, and sometimes it's going to plateau and all of these things. But the goal of, in my mind, living a healthy life and finding that balance and all of those things is that in general you're learning from your past mistakes and you're trying to move in the right direction, the upward direction.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's like taking in healthy constructive feedback even for yourself, right? Or you have healthy friendships and you're willing to take their constructive feedback and not taking it too personally and just to continue moving forward. Leaving room for our flaws, but like, yeah, just accepting things for what it
Yeah.
is. And yeah.
Yeah, the flaws are important too. Like I think to me that's the most interesting thing about like healthiness and even like wisdom and all these like virtues that we talk about. It's like even in like the old Zen koans when they talk about wisdom, they also talk that you can't talk about wisdom without talking about like the importance of foolishness on the path to wisdom, right? So like that's why the fool is often actually, wise, the character of like the wisest person, like in the tropes, the fool is the wisest person and that kind of thing, because like how important are my foolish times to my wisdom path, my aspiration towards wisdom. And I like to think of it like aspiration. Leveling up is probably the same way, same thing. But yeah, aspiration just makes it feel very like noble or something. It gives me that mythos.
The conversation about healthiness also kind of brought me back to the prompt that I shared in the group chat, and the conversation about what does it mean to have quote unquote a healthy society, and how do you communicate, a healthy lifestyle. So, for example, we could talk about how hitting your macros is very, very important. But there are, for example, people who have cellulose triggered IBS, and then they can't eat plant matter. And all of a sudden, all of this advice about a healthy diet doesn't apply to them, even though it does apply generally. So I guess, what does it mean to have a healthy society, if anything? And what is the push and pull between encouraging health for the quote unquote general population, for the average quote unquote, versus advocating for the individual to be empowered and find their agency in finding health on their own? And this also brings me to, sorry, I'm gonna shut up soon, but it also begs the question of like, what is the government or corporate responsibility to keeping us healthy? Do we have a right to have red 40 in our foods because I want those hot Cheetos, dang it? Or or should things like that be banned? What is the push and pull of like society versus the individual when it does come to health?
It's interesting being in Europe now, and I can't get my hot Cheetos, and I can't get certain things. And even Logan Paul's recently been in the news because Prime has like enough caffeine to be like 2 Red Bulls and 4 Cokes and a bunch of sugar and more, just horrible things in it, right? And even the European Prime is different because the standard is different here. And so I've been thinking about that. And look, is it a pain not being able to get my hot Cheetos? Yes, it is. But also, it's kind of nice not getting products with a cancer warning label on it. Like recently, corn has been under fire. Also, if you look at your cans of corn, they've been importing it from different places now. I think Thailand's one of them. And now there's a cancer warning label on your corn. And I think about that as well, where in America, I'm used to my bread having a cancer warning. I'm used to like things having, and Europe just looks at us like, oh, you're so
You're also
interesting.
from California, and they're crazy over
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
Okay,
true,
so-
true, true,
I'm
true,
just
true,
kidding.
true. But it
Yeah.
is interesting, like, what are you willing to sacrifice as an individual to benefit the collective? And it's like kind of, enough. I think enough is the answer. And the question is like, what is enough? And then as an individual, what are you doing to go out of your way to be even healthier on your own? But I will say, living in Europe now has given me a different perspective on sort of not having access to whatever weird, like, oh, even the candy is different. Like, I'll be like, oh, where are your like this candy and this candy? And it's just pure sugar. Now that I think about it, I'm like, oh, American candy's wild, bro. We have wild candy. But yeah, I think it definitely makes you wonder if it's worth it. I'm gonna be real. The culture here, it's nice. It's very relaxed. I just had dinner with some friends of the family, and they pay attention, first of all, to American politics. That was a fascinating conversation. They knew everybody we know. It's very weird, but also they're so relaxed. They can tell I'm an American because I'm like, I always work 7 days a week, and they're like, oh. And they're like in law, and like they work very demanding jobs. So I will say, like, in an ideal society, I think we'd be optimizing the dignity of human life and like enjoying life for the short time we're here, more so than just being like workers or being, I don't know what to call it, a cog in the machine, I suppose. What do you guys think?
Mm, I heavily agree. Yeah. I'm going to leave in 4 minutes, though, okay?
Perfect. Thank you for letting me know.
Yeah, there's definitely a line, right? There's a line. I don't want to be forced to be happy, you know. I wanna be able to choose my happiness and fight for it and make my mistakes for it. It doesn't feel like happiness if it's forced on me. But
So
the
you're
human
saying yes.
capacity for self-deception is so high. I don't trust myself fully either.
Mm.
So I accept the yeah. I accept the chaos that comes with having more freedom, I think, than being forced to be healthy.
Oh, so
By
you're saying yes to
yeah.
Red 40. Yes to
I'm
the
saying
hot
yes,
Cheetos.
yes, yes. Yeah, yes. Yeah. I
I
think
guess
so. Yeah.
I feel like maybe somewhere like in between. Like maybe there's like access to the hot Cheetos, but like with a disclosure, but then I'm like, we have that on fucking American bread labels already. And like, does anybody really know what that means? Because it just gets so confusing that everything is labeled with this may cause cancer, for example, that like we're just kind of okay, well, everything causes cancer, so we're not even really like paying attention to the
Taking any of
significance
it
of the label.
seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I'm
Oh
like,
my
well,
gosh.
labels are good because then we can make informed decisions. But how many of us are really making these informed decisions? So I don't know. I'm split.
Our culture is funny. Now that we're talking about this, I'm just like, we're pretty interesting.
Yeah, and America has so many different feedback loops that are really not good, even though we have all this freedom. So it's like even the free choice, I see tons of problems with. So
Yeah, right.
it's that I don't feel like there's a like that is the question about society. How much freedom do we let individuals have versus
How much freedom is
forcing
too
them?
much freedom?
Yeah, and versus forcing them into these specific ways of being for what's the goal and for who's good and all that stuff.
Right.
But would we, so I do also wonder though, like if we look at different ways societies operate, where do we think people feel like they have more agency? I hear often a lot about Americans actually saying how they struggle with feeling like they have agency or that they have control over their own individual lives. At least that's kind of the messaging that I see. Whereas, I was just visiting my cousin in Europe, and she was talking about how, they do siesta every day, and the government will actually give you money if you have children, especially if you have 3 children, you get even more. They give you a month off for your wedding, and that's not counting the vacation time you already get, and all these great, perks. But also when we look at Spain's economy, if we look at the economy, it's not doing so hot. The amount of money people earn compared to, especially living in California, is much, much less. At the same time, the cost of living is much, much less, and traveling to other countries is very accessible because Europe is such a small landmass compared to the continental United States. So it's very interesting, I guess, the mentality and the messaging that people come away. Is it that Americans actually have less agency, or is it that Americans actually have less agency, or actually they have more agency and they feel like they have less agency? Which is it? I don't know.
Or maybe, when you said that, it brought to mind the idea of how like constraints actually can afford agency sometimes. Like, for example, we're bound to our human bodies, but our human bodies enable us to do all this stuff, right? We're constrained inside of it, but it gives us all this agency that we are constrained in it. So it's like, what are the proper constraints that the system has that will actually afford the most agency? And maybe just having no constraints at all isn't the best. And I feel like in a lot of ways that's kind of America. We have just like unbridled capitalism, and like that causes a lot of suffering and all this other stuff. Yeah.
This is blowing my mind. I have a lot to think about. I do got to get going though, ladies. I really appreciate this conversation. It's so fascinating, and I have a lot to think about. But yeah, maybe
you
I'll
for
stay
being
tuned with
here.
your other.
Yeah,
No,
we
thanks for
enjoyed
having
you.
me.
We'll have
Yeah.
you on again, of course, if you have time. And please have a
I would
wonderful
love that.
day. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye,
Have a
Danielle.
good day, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, it is interesting. Like the theme of yesterday's dinner was literally like it was so, I mean, it was a family dinner, but it was like with more people. And I can't explain to you the vibes, but the vibes were basically like the chillest vibes. And they kept talking about like, oh, it's so relaxed here, right? You're so relaxed being here, right? Like even the workers here, like your work day, like you can leave and have lunch and like we'll sometimes meet with people during their work day, and like it feels very different. Even the Uber drivers here are always like, oh, you're American. They're like, it's cool here, right? It's relaxed. I was like, yes, it's very relaxed. And they're like, how do you like that, right? I was like, yeah, it's kind of hard to beat. Like they are very relaxed versus I just talked to my mom and she said, you can feel the tension in the air. She says, you can feel it at the grocery store. You can feel it in line. You can feel it when people get their bill at the end. You can just feel the tension. And it's like everyone's waiting to see what the election's going to bring. Everyone's waiting to see. So I'm not, going back to that, it's all about tolerance, like where everyone's line is, even with the bear and the man or the economy or whatever we're all facing. We're really saying, like, where's my limit? Where am I going to thrive the best? And we have a globe. You can be anywhere on this planet. And it's like, why do I choose to stay in a landscape that's not fueling my joy? Why am I here? And often it's for a lot of good reasons, economic reasons, family reasons, whatever. But I think that it plays into that keeping the balance. Where am I going to keep my balance the longest? And that's the question. Like, I mean, I come from an immigrant background. It's not like it would be weird to move and not go back, My family's never gone back. That's the first question I get asked. Have your parents ever gone back to Iraq? No. Do they ever want to go? No. It's kind of like, well, maybe we'll never go back. Maybe I'll never go back. I hope Croatia lets me stay forever, which is weird because I do love America. But yeah, maybe the freedom I needed was less pressure. Cheaper housing.
I have heard from a few friends who are either immigrants or have dual citizenship or something of that nature. And several of them have expressed feeling as if they have more freedom in other countries outside the US, which is obviously somewhat ironic given America's all about freedom,
Sure.
right? It's just kind of interesting.
Well, it's like, how does freedom look, right? Like, I think
Right.
from my understanding of like, because Croatia is like one of the safest countries, from my understanding, I think they feel the most freedom because they feel the most safe. Like, I'll always be like, oh my God, was that a noise? What if somebody's like climbing through our window with a gun? He's like, first of all, why would they have a gun? I mean, they could have a gun, but like, why would they have a gun? And I was like, I don't know. People have guns everywhere. And he goes, no. And I was like, oh, yeah. Like, no, they don't. And so some people do, obviously. There was actually a recent shooting in Europe. I don't remember where it happened. And I was thinking, like, where'd they get a gun? And that does happen, right? But it's not like America where it's like a constant thing. They're doing drills in school now. So I wonder if freedom could also feel like safety, right? Which is why your kids might feel the safest and most free with parents who made them feel like they're invincible, or like mom and dad will always have me. They'll always have my back. Like, I'll be okay, because it gives them the freedom to let go of the anxiety of looking over their shoulder. Something like that, maybe.
You know, that takes me back to the knowing, that the havey kind of knowing, and then the embodied being sense of knowing, right? So like America's very graspy, very like having mode. Like, I gotta have all these products and capitalism and produce and produce and produce and product. Whereas maybe Europe is more like being mode. So it's more like about the embodied, like, how do I exist here? How do I feel in my body? I feel this embodied sense of safety, you know.
Mm.
It's optimizing for two different things.
And I could see both being valuable.
Hmm. Yeah, neither. I think at least the philosophy stuff about having mode versus being mode is very you know, the having mode is not bad. It's just what causes suffering for the human is when we try to meet the needs of one mode within the context of the other mode.
Oof.
And I think that's America gets into that big time because we are so having mode, so
Yeah.
product oriented, that we try to meet our being needs of like happiness, you know, joy, love, that kind of, with products and with having, and that causes us a lot of suffering in our culture, I think.
What's interesting too is actually when I was in England, it reminded me a lot of the States, which makes sense because of, you know, where the culture of the States
Kind of
comes from.
related
It's
to
not
them
like,
stuff.
yeah, the Americans didn't just come up with it out of their ass. They, you know, the current government structure, you know, the founding fathers, et cetera, they immigrated from England. And that was also interesting, seeing the contrast of England versus Spain versus France. There's definitely, I think, even like a Western Europe versus Southern Europe um, divide there of how they prioritize their time, and what sorts of things are afforded to that population by their government. Even I think within the EU, which doesn't apply to the states, to the United Kingdom anymore, to the UK. So that's also been interesting to see, I guess, how this the American culture evolved from the British culture. And I was also telling my cousin, like, hey, like, this just reminds me of San Diego and of Mexico, like, you know, like right on the border, like the Spanish culture, how that influenced Mexican culture. And but they're also their own things. And why did they go those different ways? I think I was hearing something about how, oh no, it was from Atomic Habits by James Clear. And he was talking about how in Germs, Guns, and Steel, how the American continent is, is it longitude or latitude? Anyway, it goes from north to south, which very much the changes in the geography make it so that you can't have the same crop in, you know, a lot of the landmass. You have to like start changing your agricultural habits. Whereas in Europe and the Middle East, the Fertile Crescent, you can it's kind of the same landscape for a bit. So you can, you know, expand your territory with the same techniques more efficiently. And I wonder how much that still plays an influence on our culture, is just the weather, the geographies. Because I sometimes think of like we talk about American culture, but then me living in Southern California is a very particular thing. It feels very, very different being in Texas versus being in Arizona versus being in Illinois, for example, or New York. it's almost like all these
And then you
different
talk
kind of
about small town versus big town.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's and we're back to bubbles. And thank you, Brittany.
Well, I was just thinking about tornadoes as well. My brother lives in Tornado, not alley proper, but like near tornadoes. And right now they just got a huge warning for like 5 or 6 states, and he's one of those states. And he took a picture of the kids in their bunker thing, and he was like, "We'll let you know how it goes." And I was like, "What's happening?" I was like, I'm not used to, I don't like any of this. I was like, we need to move. But like they're so happy where they are. And I'm just thinking, like, why would you live here? And like for them, it's worth it. I'm thinking of all these communities that live in a place where there's tornadoes, and I'm like, why are we doing this? But then they go, oh, you're from California, though. You have to deal with earthquakes. And I'm like, it's not the same. And then I hear people, listen, I will say this about going back to even men in the bear and like America. Yes, do we walk out every day and interact with men every day and we have absolutely no problems? Absolutely. We're not actually being like, we're actually pretty fucking civilized, right? We're doing pretty fucking well. And at the same time, people, have to deal with tornadoes. And I'm like, a man or tornado, it's just, if it's a bad day for you, it's a bad day for you. And that's the point. It's not that it's the man or the tornado. It's am I going to have a bad day with this tornado today? Am I going to have a bad day with this man today? Am I going to have a bad day today? And that's really the anxiety I think we're all holding. So the question is, where am I going to have the least amount of bad days? Probably not where tornadoes are. And maybe not even where men are, but also mostly tornadoes. You know what I mean? And that's the question.
That goes back to us all having to make the best choice for ourselves based on like what we think we can tolerate and what will lead to our own balance, right? For me, a tornado, living near a tornado zone would throw my life completely out of balance. But I have lived in California in an earthquake zone, and that wasn't enough to throw me out of balance. And I now live in the desert where half of the year it's like ungodly hot, and I have to, deal with that in different ways. But to me, that still allows for me to have better day-to-day joy and happiness than if I were somewhere that had tornadoes, at least for me, or hurricanes, or these other things that I would have to contend with in other parts of the country or world.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a question. We often talk about like, okay, this is like you can have agency to make these choices, but how can a person discover their agency? How do you snap out of, being on autopilot? And I mean, I've definitely experienced that where, you don't even ask yourself why, and then I can imagine the answer is introspection and maybe because you need it, but it feels like so many people seem like that's what they need is to discover their agency, and they don't. And maybe because they don't know how, they don't know what tools they could use. So what sorts of tools can be discovered and or offered to then help you discover your agency?
Okay, so of course my mind goes to the meaning crisis with that question, because I think that is a question that we need wisdom, I think, to know the answer to that, and we don't, and our culture lacks like wisdom systems.
Yeah, it's hard for me not to default to why and like, well, why do you even need this or do you need it? And it's hard to say. And I think we need to validate that as well, is that people can have perfectly decent lives without ever really asking themselves more than why. And I think we should acknowledge that. I think if anything, and I don't mean to speak exactly from this place, but I would say that if you are maybe somebody who maybe I would want to gear towards my content towards somebody who is not being fulfilled, somebody who is already struggling, somebody who is already like different and like somehow not meshing. It's not that you're even different. Like I would argue, you know how like neurodivergent people are painted as if like they're this anomaly in society, and like right now they are, but I'm pretty sure if you put us all in like a country, we could be like billions of people, and then we wouldn't feel like an anomaly. We would feel like another culture. And that culture within itself would have its own conflicts because not everyone gets along. But I kind of think that there's an illusion. That's why I don't even know what the average means, by the way. Like, I don't even know what that means. Who, which average, which demographic, which version, you know what I mean? Especially since, so I guess I get frustrated with this like simplification of the human experience because it's so specific on categorization, which might be my neurodivergency, where I'm like, what category are you though? You know, where do you follow? I've become much more open to astrology as like a categorization system lately. I'm like, what's your sign? I'm gonna Google it. What is it? Like, not because I think it's like real, but because I think it's real enough that humans rely on it and they relate to it. And so there must be some sort of something to that, you know? So, I don't remember where I was going, and now I need to hand it off because I don't remember the point of that. So sorry.
I do think I personally am of the opinion that wisdom is not an option for humans. I do think, like, if you think about the type of creatures that we are and the fact that we're always encountering problems, that we're always changing, we're always unfolding, like it seems imperative for us that we learn better and better ways of existing and being in the world. And wisdom is just how we evolve our evolvability, in my
Mm,
opinion. So it goes back to the layers thing and the levels thing. Maybe like a spiral that starts down here and gets bigger and goes up like this. And so it can seem like we're at the same place, but really if you look down, so like people are at just completely different spots along the way of wisdom. And I do think developmentally there comes a time in people's lives when they're not distracted anymore by, oh, I gotta, oh, finally I graduated high school, I'm an adult, I get to try out all these adult skills. Oh, I graduated college and I get to do the job thing and find a job. Oh, I get to find a spouse and do that thing. Oh, I get to have a baby. That takes you until about mid 30s to get, for all that stuff to sort of like lose its dopaminergic pull in your life. You know what I mean? Like, and so then at that point you're just kind of like, oh, like what do I do now? This is life. This is life for the next however till I die. Like, and then you have to deal with that, and people, I think they fill their lives with structures and systems and distractions and to not have to think about that stuff because it really is kind of when you start doing that. And I think there's that, maybe not everyone, but like like we kind of know before we go on that journey, like this is going to destroy everything I think about myself if I go, if I
yeah.
do this. And so we create all these things to avoid it. And some people are successful enough at creating systems to avoid it that they never have to look at it, but others of us, it really is, we have to face ourselves or die, which sounds dramatic, but I
No,
think it is
that's
inherently dramatic to
relatable.
be a human. So,
Yeah. I
yeah.
mean, that felt relatable to even me, where it felt like, look, I was either going to do this or I was going to die, and it wouldn't even matter to the world. Like, I know everyone says it matters, but like, we move on. The world moves on. And like, that's the harshest reality I had to learn is like, it doesn't matter if I live or die, but it matters to me. And I got to decide if it matters to me enough. And I only wanted to exist if I could exist how I wanted. And I feel like I get to do that every day now. And so that's pretty powerful. Like, it's pretty powerful to be like, I get to exist how I want every day. Obviously, I still have to pay bills like all of you bitches. Okay, we all have to pay bills. But like, it's like I try to do it on my terms as much as possible, which means I get to pick my apartment and say, okay, I'm willing to suffer this much at work to pay this bill, or I'm willing to suffer this much. And life is always going to be suffering, but it's like how to suffer wisely, right? It was always the goal,
Hmm. Hmm. I mean, everything wisely, in
right?
my opinion. Everything wisely. That's what virtue is, I
Mm.
think. It's the wise option of the human polarities, non-dualities. Yeah.
Ooh, how does that tie into that original question about the man and the bear? Where does the wisdom lie in choosing the bear, and where does the wisdom lie in choosing the man? Or was it just like so reactionary, which is what hypotheticals often do, right? Is they put us in this reactionary kind of like, oh my gosh, what's the word? Like, this is where my brain goes, so I'm gonna pick this answer type thing. So like, is there wisdom and like how does I want to recontextualize that
How does one
question.
answer that question wisely?
Yeah. Because I don't think I was, I'm not saying that I was thinking of it wisely. I would say I was thinking of it as a pure hypothetical. Like, what would you do if you got 3 wishes? I wasn't engaging with it wisely, but now if I think about it wisely, what would my answer be?
There is no bear, there is no man. There is no you, there is no wood.
There's no forest.
Oh. Okay, to me, that's the thing though, because that's the thing about wisdom, right? And it goes back to what Irina was saying. Someone with IBS is not going to be able to follow the wisdom, the common wisdom, right? About what to eat. It's wisdom is about the subjective perspective and how they interact with their arena, it's about finding those little openings. So it really, I feel like the wise answer would be the answer that doesn't hold on to the proposition of the statement, but says whatever would happen. You know what I mean? Like, wisdom doesn't feel black and white enough for that question. Does that make sense? Like, the wise answer feels like it would be nuanced and not just man or bear. And your question is wrong, or your answer is wrong or right,
That is actually interesting because I do think the wisdom would be to ask more details about the question. But
Yeah.
the question is just man or bear, period.
Mhm.
Is
Then
the question inherently unwise?
Yes,
maybe.
like it almost. I mean, it's meant to evoke a reaction,
Right.
right? It is meant to evoke something. I mean, I think hypotheticals are like, I'm infamous for being quite literal in my hypotheticals, but the problem is like I feel like it is a trap. I think people ask you hypotheticals to trap you and to shame you for your answer. And this is why I like doing hypotheticals with my siblings, because there's no wrong answer. You cannot answer incorrectly. There's only like, what? No, this is what I would do. Oh, interesting. Oh, it's like we're examining. We're not, because it's not real. The point is like it's supposed to be a safe space of imagination. But I think usually when I engage with hypotheticals, it turns into the bear man situation where people get mad at me. And I'm like, why are you getting mad? It's just like, is this not, I'm so, like, it makes me not want to engage, Because, like, did you hear what Brittany just said? And I'm like, now, see,
No,
now,
hypotheticals are meant to be fun or, explore about each other's values and things like that. Like
Mhm.
in my household, we constantly do hypotheticals. What sort of atrocities would you commit to have wizard powers? Okay, how about wizard powers for a
Yeah.
day? How about what would you do to get a one single first level spell from the
Mhm.
D&D wizard spell list? Those kinds of questions. Or like, how long would you survive in a zombie apocalypse? What are we doing? Those kinds of questions are very much fun, and it's not fun to get mad at someone for their answers,
Well, I would
because
say,
then it's
go ahead, please.
yeah. I was gonna say, because then what's the are you asking the question from a place of good faith, or are you, like you were talking about, Brittany, trying to trap someone, like
Yeah.
actually, and then
Yeah. Well, there's like this TikToker who always goes around to like the Mormon college, and he goes like, would you rather like drink coffee or like be with Joseph Smith for 5 minutes, or like, oh, would you rather like drink coffee or do something really horrendous, like eat a dog or something, some whatever. And the kids always choose whatever is in line with their faith. Like they're very diligent about choosing what's in line, even if it sounds crazy to the rest of us. They're like, this is what I would do. And a part of it is kind of amazing that they always, even in the hypothetical, they're like aligned with their values, right? And I think even when we talk about hypotheticals with politics, like I think about that too. Like people take even the answer you would give, like, do you think it's good to be a parent in this situation? It's like, I'm not saying anything about anyone who exists right now. Are you asking me a question in general? And that's the problem, is that I think sometimes people don't know how to ask. That's why philosophy is so difficult, because you have to ask the question without the fear of the consequence. We're asking the question to explore and dissect what is truth. And so it's not about you, it's about the idea. But I don't think people can, because like Harmony kind of said, though, we do embody, we do put ourselves there, we do like, and then it becomes scary. And then all of a sudden our fear is answering, and then our defense mechanism is answering, and then our trauma is answering, which is also a valid answer. But also, what do we do even past that answer? What is the answer past that answer is what I want to know. Because I think all the answers could make sense for where you are in that spiral loop Harmony, talked about. Is like, where are you in the little vortex? Is like, well, the answers make sense here, but then when you get here, it's a different answer. And when you get here, it's a different answer. And when you get here, it's a different answer. But the goal in my mind is to get to that point where you get to the better answer for the healthier version of you. But that version, the answer I made when I didn't pay my rent in my 20s because I wanted to spend my money partying with my friends and then I paid rent late. That was the answer, but it was not a good answer. But also, like, I paid my late fee, okay?
But it probably informs your current answers, doesn't it?
Which is why I pay my bills in
The
advance as much
fool
as possible.
is essential. The fool is essential. Being the fool is essential to being wise.
Oh, that version of me that paid her bills late is the reason I pay my bills early now.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It did ultimately lead to wisdom.
Yeah.
A foolish
So
choice.
So it was
Yeah.
it was a very wise choice if you think about it in context of your future
Sure.
and how your future would base the choices off that. Yeah.
Well, now I know
even-
now I know
even-
those late fees ain't worth paying.
Yes.
You know?
Right, right.
In an embodied way.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Exactly.
You don't just propositionally know that. You experienced it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, do we think there's a difference in how people are viewing and or interacting with their agency and or empowerment that affects how they answer that question?
Can you
So
explicate?
like the man versus the bear in the forest, how would the place that that person is in regarding their agency or empowerment, whether they feel life or they have all of the agency in their life, how would it affect them answering the question? And not necessarily the answer, because the answer could be the same as somebody with no agency, but maybe how they come to the conclusion of the answer that they're picking.
Oh gosh, you could go so many places with that question, right? Like, but it all comes back to like who the subjective consciousness is that's making that choice, and what their embodied experience is, and what their salience landscape is, what's important to them, what draws their attention, about any circumstance.
I've been thinking about.
Almost,
Well, go ahead, Harmony,
yeah.
please. Sorry.
I was
Go,
gonna
go,
say
go.
it's almost like base level instinct is like run, just run. That's like wisdom at a very bottom level, like no matter what it is, who it is, just run. And then you get up into the like, oh no, I can actually like engage maybe a predatory man in like psychological discourse that will convince him to change his mind. I don't know. I don't know. I could just see so many different levels of experiences. Yeah.
Okay, sort of on that thought process, but maybe I don't want to derail, but I was thinking of sometimes I'll get a question, I'll answer it very quickly. And the difference between a young person answering very quickly who hasn't thought about it much is like arrogance. And the fastness in which I answer questions now is because all I do is think about these questions. So I have these answers lined up in my head. Is like, how do you know the difference? How do you know you're being unwise in the answer because you've pondered it or not pondered it, and then wise in the answer because you've pondered it for so long you have it on the top of your head? And it's really about like me going through a checklist of like, have I really thought about? Sometimes in stream you'll see me pause and everyone's like, "Oh, Brittany's pausing," and I'm like, fuck, I haven't thought about it like this. So now I have to think about it. And even with the bear man and the wise situation, now I got to ponder this for the next 10 days too. Stream's never going to hear the end of this, and like, TikTok. But like now I have to think about it from that perspective because it's a different answer, maybe. But maybe it's
See,
the right
that brings
answer.
up
Tell me.
that brings up the role of intuition and wisdom too, because I don't think intuition is fully divorced from wisdom.
I
Those
agree.
gut instincts that we
No,
make
not at
sometimes
all.
without
Yeah.
thinking. I'm telling you,
I agree.
It's
and
based in wisdom a lot of the times.
yes, well, and that goes back to your agent arena relationship. Like for me as a sex worker, I have my instincts like honed. I'm telling you, I play this social deduction game with my friends, and every time I think something in my head, I say it, and it's always right. I'm telling you, I can suss these people, and I don't know how, I don't know exactly what it is, but like there is something about being steeped in a certain socially dangerous type of environment that teaches you things in an embodied way that it's not about knowing that at all. Like I could not tell you how to have a gut intuition. I could not like explain it to you. It's about being in that environment and having the knowing through being, and that is a huge part of wisdom. I think it's almost like wisdom's almost like the being wisdom in a relationship with the propositional knowing that wisdom, Does that make
Interesting.
sense?
Genevieve, please.
Sorry, I was gonna say like wisdom has to have like an element of experience, sort of, right? Like
I
street
think
smarts
so.
versus like book learning, right?
My
Like wisdom
version,
is going
yeah.
to come from having some lived experience as well.
Yeah, I think so, big time.
It's
Yeah.
funny, my mom and I played this game, and I just with my siblings, we probably just like we're just nosy, but like we also are testing ourselves. Like we'll be in public, and be like that girl's about to reach for this, that girl's gonna go do this, and we're predicting like what people are doing to also predict ourselves. And it's like we're not really like, trust me, we're not paying attention to you. We're just paying attention to the group category you are. Like, what was this girl gonna do? Or my mom would be like, watch, this lady's gonna do this in a second. Watch 5 seconds, and even it's a predictability game, but we're really testing ourselves. Like, can you tell what kind of person you're interacting with? Or like,
That's why social deduction games are fun.
they
You're
are
testing
so
that.
fun. They're
Mhm.
so fun. And
Yeah.
then it does make you feel like you kind of have a superpower, but it's not. I think you're using data. And I think your data stores up like a computer, and your instinct and your gut become a part of that data collection. So sometimes on stream, you'll see me say, like, I'm getting like a neurodivergent, like, I'm getting like a thing. I,
Sense, yeah.
I don't have the words yet, but I'm telling you this is the answer. And I know people get
Mhm.
sometimes like, no way, no way. And I'm like, sometimes I'm wrong, but
I
girl,
believe
I'm
that
right
stuff.
a lot. I'm right a lot. So then I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, why was I right? And I think it's quite logical, actually. I think it's quite like your brain is storing all of this data, you're witnessing all of these people. And it's funny because even today we were out for our walk, and I always get scared. Like people are always like shocking me, like they're coming out of nowhere, and I'm like, and like he's like, oh my gosh, like can you like where's your? I was like, I'm so anxious, I should be paying attention, but I think when I'm with him, I let my guard down and I let him do the worrying. Like if we're gonna crash into people, and I just kind of become like a tourist, and I'm like, look at the buildings and look at the things. And I realize when I'm alone, I don't do that. I spin circles, I pay attention, I watch for bikers, I'm like extra vigilant. But I realized like when I'm just like in the moment, I'm less vigilant, but I'm also just like, and I'm shocked sort of by like, oh, nature. I walked into a spider web today. A spider web. Walked right into it. And I was like, girl. And so I was like, okay, well, I took one
Bleh.
for the team. I took one for the team, okay? Because he was paying attention. So he stopped walking and I did not. And so I was like, well, okay, here we are. So it's like interesting, like when I'm in, like when I'm paying attention, when am I vigilant? It's also when I'm like afraid. So when I'm not afraid, I'm just kind of like a kid, and I'm just kind of like doing
Mhm.
my thing, which is sort of interesting to recognize about myself as well, where I'm like, oh, okay, like I do pay attention, but I'm also like collecting so much data. It's just data collection and data collection and data collection, that I think I attribute a lot of that to like my instinct and my guts and how I feel about people. And when I look them in the eye, the feeling I get either like gives me some sort of like feeling, and I do trust that feeling. I do
Mhm.
trust it. Yeah.
Yes, that embodied. I don't know if everyone has access to that kind of knowing. But like it's like that's the kind of knowing that I'm like big on. Yeah. Well,
Mhm.
actually I do think everyone does. And maybe it's another level thing, like we're sensory animals. We all have embodied knowing.
We
Yeah.
just have to practice, I think, paying attention to it and
Yes.
knowing when it's relevant and all of those sorts of
Mhm.
things. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well that
We all
brought me
have the
that
ability.
yes. Um and what you were just saying, Brittany, brought to mind how you know fear is something that really manipulates our salience landscape, what we're paying attention to, but like all those embodied kind of visceral emotions are like dis- that distort our salience landscape. Like fear is a big one, huge one. I think our like sexual proclivities is another huge one that manipulates our salience landscape. um and some of those like more like things like that are like about the way our bodies exist in the world, like makes us our consciousnesses much more like apt to attach, I think, based on, oh, I'm afraid of something, so I'm going to like attach myself to this idea, and I'm going to like destroy this other person because of my fear, because I'm attaching myself to the fear
Mhm.
that comes from having being different than someone, or like I have this like impulse in my body, I want to have sex, whatever. How many times do we like destroy our lives because of like the manipulation of our salience landscape being so powerful over us.
Mm.
And so like that detachment, that's where that comes into me, like as far as like wisdom and maybe empowerment too, like if we can like detach ourselves from those embodied experiences of fear.
Well, I
I
mean,
don't know if I'm using the best language to explain what I'm saying, but
no,
do
no,
you know
no.
what I mean?
You know what's crazy is like if you go back to my 20s, I would know something was wrong. And I would say, I don't think we should date, or like this person feels dangerous, or something is wrong. And people, I did not trust myself enough to say, I don't have the answers, but I'm not doing it. And now I have that now where I'm like, I am telling you right now, this person is dangerous and something bad is going to happen, and I'm not engaging. And I know I don't have the evidence. I know you think I'm just accusing somebody, but I would rather be safe than sorry. And it always turns out better than worse. But in my 20s, I did not trust myself enough to do it. And it was socially like awkward to be like, with peace and love. And then I learned that, okay, something in me knows, even if I don't have the words. And I think the difference between Brittany in her 20s and Brittany now is she does know when she doesn't have the words, but she knows that it doesn't matter. Her intuition is good enough. And frankly, especially with new people coming into my life, it's not my responsibility to add them into my roster just because they want to be there. And so I've been thinking about that. Like, I look back at my 20s and I remember saying to people, doesn't this woman feel weird? Don't you guys get a bad feeling from her? Like, am I the only one? And everyone's like, no, that's so weird. Why would you say that? And boom, stalker. Like, I was like, hey, don't you feel it? Like, something is so wrong about her.
Oh,
And
see,
like,
this is interesting. Okay, I'm gonna remember. You
tell me,
continue.
no, that's it. That just that feeling of like, can't you tell? And then, no, I just didn't have the evidence. I didn't know how to explain it.
It takes me back to the question about like, would you rather encounter a man or a woman in the
Mm.
woods? Because my sense of danger is much more heightened around men. So I feel like because of that, I'd be much more geared in. Whereas for a woman, I don't have that sense at all. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like I do not feel so. I've actually made that mistake like recently in my life where I misjudged a woman, and it was whatever. I worked through the issues, but it caused issues in my life, and I gave her the benefit of the doubt where I would not, if it was a man doing the same
Ooh.
thing, I would not have given her the benefit of the doubt, him the benefit of the doubt.
Weird. So are you saying that technically a man is dangerous, but you feel safer with that danger?
Yes, yes, it's a
Okay.
known danger. It's a
Yeah.
known danger to
Yeah,
me.
yeah,
Yes, like it.
yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, interesting.
That's
I
why
was
that's
gonna
why a woman is actually more dangerous to me, the consciousness, because I'm blind as far as like how do women work, even though I am a woman. It's you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
But you feel like you know and understand the ways in which a man could be dangerous, and you have experienced that in the past, so you'd
Yes.
be able to make wise decisions should you experience
Yeah.
that in the future.
Yeah,
Mm.
exactly.
Okay,
Yes.
got you. Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Mhm.
I was gonna say, how do we tell that our intuition, like where is it coming from? Because if our arena or perspective, lens, salience, landscape, whatever, is traumatizing, our intuition can come from a place of trauma. And then another point too is what, how do you, if intuition is pointing to something true, though I think in your case, Brittany, it was a situation involving you, so you'd have the intuition, deduction to be like, okay, this is a situation involving me, and I don't like it. So, but other people maybe were more further removed from it,
Mm-hmm.
that were reacting to it, right? So
Right.
they didn't see what you saw because they weren't going to be involved.
Right.
But in the case where everybody is involved in the situation and people's intuitions are saying different things, how do you evaluate, on what basis? I mean, at the end of the day, you should trust yourself, but we are also, like Harmony likes to say, we are self-deceiving creatures. How do you know when you are falling into that pattern of self-deception and
Mm.
coming from an unhealthy place, and maybe your intuition is a little bit off or out of whack? How do you get it either back, or how do you develop it further in a healthier way? And what do you do when your intuition conflicts with another's intuition, maybe another
Mm.
person that you trust, or maybe a person that you don't trust?
Yeah, that's why I had my hand finger. That was exactly what I was going to ask. You're inside my head right now. And I will, okay, I'm going to say this out loud and I might get judged for it. I genuinely think my intuition has always been fire, but I haven't honored it because I think I'm stupid. but I
Mhm.
actually know I'm smart, but I also doubt myself. And I know I'm smart enough to suss it out, but also I've made mistakes enough. But I will tell you this, ask any conversation I've had with an ex. I remember always saying to them, like, we're going to get fucked up. We're going to fuck each other up. This is a bad relationship, right? And they'd be like, no, this is a normal relationship. And I doubted my intellect at the time to decipher the information because we were bonding on so many things. There were good things in my relationships, guys, like really powerful, amazing moments in my relationships. I didn't just form them because I hated myself. I thought I was in love. It was beautiful. We had good moments. But I would tell myself, like, something is wrong. And I would tell them because I'm very open with my relationships. I'm like, we're not great together, right? Like, we're awkward. We're like that couple at the dinner table that everyone is tense around because we're fighting and bickering. Like, oh, well, I don't want to be that couple in the sitcom. Like, don't you think that's weird? And then I realized, like, I didn't have the wisdom to trust myself, but I also didn't have the data in the forefront of my mind. But also, I think I've always known better, but I don't know why I know better, but only about myself. So then, when going to Arena's question, is when you have an intuition about someone else in relation to somebody else, that is much more complicated and nuanced than in relation to Brittany. Because I'm coming from an internal compass that's like very loud and knows itself. Now, especially now, right at 35, I really know myself, but I don't always know it for somebody else. Obviously, I can't read people's minds. So the thing I think I would rely on is probably the wisdom of everyone involved, but especially the people in question, the like actual person that's being questioned. I think because I know myself enough, but it's hard to read other people's minds because you can't. So it's like you have to collect data so much more like in detail because I just don't know everything. And the worst part is if you have somebody who doesn't know themselves well enough to communicate it to you. So then you're moving off bad data, but then all data is kind of good data for the moment in time you're examining that person, you know?
That's why the adult human interactions are so confusing to me, to be honest,
Mm,
because there are so many unknown variables as far as, so I have to trust my own gut intuition and my own patterns. Now, if I trusted somebody else to have a certain skill and a certain, maybe type of person that they know about something, I might be able to use my intuition about that person's knowledge to trust their intuition to help inform me, but only in that kind of a situation where their knowledge is, better than mine, if that makes
mm-hmm,
sense.
mm-hmm. How would we say, because I think, Arena, you're getting at, and correct me if I'm wrong, sort of like we know about ourselves, but how do people know about themselves? Like, are you asking how we got there, or what's the focus here?
I guess so the scenario I'm posing is you're with well, I guess I can predict the Brittany answer right now, but you're with someone you trust and your intuitions are saying something different about a person or situation that affects you both. How do you address that?
Who's the person that I'm talking with?
See, if I say it's your partner, then you'll say our intuitions say the same things, which is fair. I understand that. So
Like
maybe
siblings, maybe, because we'd more likely
sibling
disagree.
or parent or something like that. Yeah.
I mean, I think because we talk about this pretty often in my family. If we do have intuition about people, we usually take bets and go, I guess we'll see who's right. Because at the end of the day, someone's gonna have to make a choice. Like, if a sibling's going through something and I'm like, this isn't where you're heading, but we'll see where you are in 6 months, Because usually I'm the sibling people come to say, like, tell me, just tell me, don't sugarcoat it, just tell it to me. And I was like, I think this is a dumb decision. You should do this instead. But you're gonna do what you're gonna do. And they're like, I'm not gonna do what you suggested. I was like, okay. And then 6 months later, they're usually like, so I probably should have done what you suggested, but also I didn't. So now what? And I was like, okay, so now since you did this thing changed. So the idea is that you have to let people go on the journey, but people also have to learn for themselves how to trust themselves the way you trust yourself. Oh, Mau Mau's. Oh, Mau Mau's.
He's getting so big. He's huge.
Wait, is that the kitten? Oh my
You're muted, by the
gosh.
way, Harmony, if you're talking to us about the lovely kitty.
How cute. How cute. I think like you teach people to learn themselves by giving them like opportunities to fuck up and opportunities to come back from it. And then, you know, you do your best. Because, like, as an older sister, if I could just, what, did I make all these mistakes so you wouldn't? No, apparently not. And then did my parents make all their mistakes so we wouldn't? Apparently not.
Are there times where, and this is a question for everybody, where your intuition was wrong and a person you trusted or even didn't trust intuition was right, and then you found out, and how did you deal with that? And did that change your relationship with what we call our
Can you
intuition,
say it
or
again?
did it
Say it
evolve?
again. Say it again.
Sorry. Have there been situations where your intuition was wrong, but also you had the perspective of somebody else who you either trusted or didn't trust, whose intuition was right? You then found out. How did that change your relationship with your intuition, or how did it evolve your intuition, or what we call our intuition?
So somebody I didn't like or respect was right and I was wrong.
Either or, like whichever real life scenario situation we can think of. Although I imagine them being somebody you don't like could be a different relationship, if it ends up that they were right and you were wrong.
What's the consequence to them being right and me being wrong?
That's a good question. It depends on the well, that's why I'm asking about a real life example of maybe that you can think of when your intuition was wrong, but also you had another perspective of somebody else and they ended up being right. Or are there only examples of where maybe you didn't listen and somebody else communicated something that your intuition was also telling you, but you decided to ignore both?
I can think of an example where I should have followed my intuition, but I questioned myself and let someone else that I respected influence me. And it's like one of those situations where looking back that I do wish I had trusted my intuition, but I guess the wisdom to be gained there is, as I have grown and learned from that, I'm less likely to allow myself to be influenced in that way in the future.
That's how you hone your intuition. Yeah.
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
have a ton of examples of it's like, oh, I knew before I made the stupid choice. I knew it, and I did the other thing anyway, and that's how I learned to
Mhm. And I
to
should have
listen.
followed
Yes,
my, yeah.
to listen to that little voice. It's just like, "Doop." And it's like that little voice fucking knows shit, man. And I do
Yeah.
think it's the same as pattern recognition. I don't think
Mm.
intuition is different from pattern recognition.
Mhm.
I saw somebody mention that in the chat.
Yeah, I
don't
think
think
that's a
I think they're
good
the same. I think they're the same.
comparison or a good, it's similar. They're in the same category.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of an example. I will say the only example that comes to mind, and look, I think I am uniquely brained in this way because I always have been my whole life. I don't mind losing and I don't mind being wrong, but it has to be wrong. Like, I don't like people who are also wrong telling me I'm wrong. So like, no, you're wrong too. We're both wrong. No, this isn't the right answer. So I remember my dad sitting me down, and one of my ex-boyfriends, I remember telling him, like, I think I want to try to make it work with this person. I want to try to get them therapy. I want to try to get them help. Like, I think this is the person I want to make life with. And my dad's like, this is not your person. And I was like, no, this is my person. And he's like, this is not your person. There's no way this is your person. And I was like, but he just needs the help. If I just get him the help, he'll be my person. And he's like, exactly. He's not your person. So you were trying to make it work with a person who's not your person. So they become your person. And I was like, I don't understand. Isn't that what I'm supposed to do? And he was just like, this is not your person. And I was like, okay, but I'm going to try
Oh,
it.
your dad knows you.
He
That's so
does.
sweet.
And so what my dad said is
Yeah.
like, I support you and I will support you in trying to get this man the help he needs, but I'll also be here when it all crashes and burns. And I was like, oh. And he was, and he held me as I cried for many, many a months. Okay. And then that was what it was. So and he was right. Like to this day, like, the family always laughs and they're like, I remember that one. I was like, my family likes to remind us of all the times, but also to remind us of how much we've grown, which is why when I brought home my now partner, the joke is like, oh, the family likes him better than they like me. And that's like a great sign because they've always hated my boyfriends and hated my partners. So they're like very excited that they like him. And I'm excited. Of course, that's a good, but yeah, I remember sitting at this kitchen table. I just remember my dad looking at me, and I remember him like you could see in his face like, oh Lord, he's about to work really hard for somebody who doesn't deserve it, or does not deserve, but somebody who's not gonna benefit from it. And
It's
then
not gonna work. He knew it wasn't gonna work
he
out the way
knew.
that you were
He
hoping it
knew.
would.
Yeah, he just knew because he had the wisdom. He'd seen it
Yeah.
time and time and time, and my dad is a predictor of failing and successful relationships. He didn't go to his
Hmm.
best friend's wedding. He's like, this woman is going to ruin your life. And this woman ruined this man's life. This man ended up like unaliving himself. He was like my godfather. And he did. This woman ruined his life. But also like he ruined his life by marrying this woman. It's kind of like ironic. But my dad predicted it 20 years before it happened. He's like, I cannot come to this wedding. This woman will destroy you. I'm telling you right now, she's not a good person. This man
Hmm.
was so good, but he'd made the decision I didn't make. He made the decision I didn't make. And I trusted my dad. I must have known. My dad's wisdom must have filtered inside of me, because I didn't end up with that person. And that person destroyed their life, so it's probably better that you know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's, yeah. That's why, is that an example, Arena? Is that kind of what you're hoping for? I'm not sure. Okay.
Yeah, it's so interesting the way that like specific people can bring out like it's like the wounding in us, our specific wounding, and we get it makes it so easy when we see like a person that reminds us of an old wound to attach ourselves to them. Like something about the human psyche just wants to resolve the trauma, and so we attach ourselves to these humans that are
Mm.
just they're so real to us, they're so salient to us. We think that this is that it's love, and it's just attachment. It's literally just attachment. Yeah,
How does,
very interesting.
if in any way, how does, if any, yeah. How does, if in any way, your intuition change if your environment completely changes? So, for example, I think about high trust versus low trust places. In Southern California, beaches are generally high trust. You leave your surfboard on the beach, you leave your phone, your wallet, your keys in a bag, like everybody goes in the water, yada yada. Nightclubs tend to be more medium trust to low trust environments. A bus stop is a low trust environment. You never leave your backpack on a bus stop. Coffee shop, you can ask a stranger to watch your bag, and generally that's accepted. So if you are thrown into a completely new environment, and or you haven't maybe you're a person who operates as if every place is high trust, or you're a person that operates as if every place is low trust. Basically, how does environment impact our intuition, and how do we get to know our environment?
Well, I'll say one of the things I'm learning about myself here is I'm learning to go out by myself. And it's been quite intimidating, if I'm going to be honest. Like, it does make me incredibly nervous. My anxiety spikes. And I can go to the store by myself. I can walk short distances and stuff like that. But getting into an Uber with a person who doesn't speak English and hoping they go to the right location has been like incredibly anxiety inducing. So I've been trying to like learn how to do that on my own, and it's not abnormal to me. I'm not much of a traveler, and honestly, I've always felt this way about myself, where I'm not good in new environments. It usually takes me a second. I usually try to stick to home or stick to things that are familiar. And even on my road trips, I mean, I heavily relied on like people who have traveled there before me versus here in Croatia, I'm in a very specific place, and so I'm trying to navigate it like a local, which is like a very different feeling. And so I'm learning and I'm getting better at it, especially with the sun out. I'm like, okay, girl, I feel much more comfortable. Weird. I'm not even exaggerating that the winter makes me feel more anxious. And so now that I'm like the sun is out, I feel like much safer because everybody's out. So there's more people and there's families and like joggers and just like the places feel alive. And so it kind of feels like safer. And so I'm learning that for me personally, um, I have like a lot of just unknown variables, which makes me pause. So I'm very data driven. If I have enough data, I'm much more comfortable. And I've noticed that that is huge for me. So talking about intuition, intuition is kind of data. So my brain is like, okay, how much data do I have? And intuitively, I will say like Croatia does feel very safe. It's me I'm doubting. I'm not even doubting them. I'm doubting me. Like my ability to like communicate or something, which is so interesting. I've never really thought about it before. But yeah, living in a foreign place with a foreign language, I'm like, oh, okay, Brittany, this is very new for you. So I'm excited for the summer because I'm definitely gonna like practice a lot more.
Yeah, definitely. Like environment changes a lot. Like not everything, because I think humans are human, no matter the culture and whatever, there's certain things that are just universal when it comes to the human experience. And then there's a lot of little things that make really big differences when it comes to effectively interacting with other humans, that vary socially, culture to culture. That's when I just kind of observe. I sit back and observe um, what's going on, and then rely on my knowledge of, like, the basics that all humans want to feel safe and be seen. And usually when you're interacting with strangers, no matter where you are, just, on a day-to-day basis, it's not it's not usually such a huge deal to really see people properly. You're just kind of that's kind of when you can thingify people, if that makes sense. Like, okay, this is just
Mm.
a person I need to like kind of like use, I guess, to get what I need to have. Like I'm thinking like taxi drivers or like, store clerks or whatever. And there's usually pretty mm, like social customs that are pretty commonly acceptable universally.
And I think they feel
So,
the same way too, because I've noticed that when I go to the store by myself, the clerk and I will do the same ritual I would do in the United States, right? Oh, only no small talk.
mm,
Zero.
nice.
They do not ask you how you're doing. They just say good day, and you say good day, and then they give you the number and how much you owe them, and then I do this, and then that's it. And they there's zero small talk here. So that's okay. I had to learn don't wave at people, don't talk to people's kids, don't smile at anybody, and no small talk. And I'm like, "Oh, cool." And it's kind of nicer because then I'm like, "Okay, good. Then I don't even have to worry about my anxiety." But it is one of those things where yeah, you're right, Harmony. There is like a yeah, like you give thing and I do this and then we exchange thing and then okay, they even have like store memberships. We're really good at using them. We're like discount and we get like really excited. We're like the couple in the building that's like, ah yes, discount. And like it feels good. So yeah, there's like something where it's like so universal, but yet so different, but so universal. Mm-hmm.
Mhm. I would probably have more of an embodied sense of danger in
Mm.
an unfamiliar place. So I would probably be like, I think you mentioned something about this, Brittany. Like you're in a certain space that's automatically going to change the way that you focus on everything around you. So I would be much more, yeah, observant, sort of like my senses would be peaked.
Mm.
I'd be ready for whatever is coming.
I'll tell you this too. No jaywalking. I almost
Good to know.
jaywalked and my partner's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, it was like so he's like, "Do not, absolutely not." And I was like, "Okay." And like it's true they do not jaywalk here. I almost never I've maybe seen one or two people in the high tourist areas, but like, no jaywalking over here, girl. Mm-mm.
No. Croatia is very different from Spain and also Armenia. Armenia is doing this to each other very aggressively.
Yeah. I heard Germany too, no jaywalking. So I think it's maybe
Mhm.
similar to that, where it's like very much like structured. And people wait, girl, there'll be no cars, no humans, and we're just waiting by this light that's literally, I'm like, we could just, and they're like, no. And I'm like, okay. Like everyone just waits. It's very interesting.
Well, things in Europe are like a much more condensed. I feel like it is probably more dangerous to jaywalk there than it is in
I
your
could see
average
that.
American town.
Oh, the way these cars zip
Everything,
around
yeah,
corners, they fully expect, you know what it is though? It's high
mhm,
trust. I trust you as a
yeah.
pedestrian not to be in the street, and I trust you as a driver not to hit me because you're not driving on the sidewalk. Even though we park
Yeah.
on the sidewalks here, okay, there is a very high trust of like, you do not jaywalk. So I do not expect you to be there, sir. And I actually do kind of appreciate that. Yeah, in a way. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
I wonder if
Mhm.
part of the pattern recognition and or intuition, as calling it, is also in a way is seeing as the Romans do, and then when somebody is misaligned with that, in the bubble that makes the pattern recognition go off. So for example, like I was at a festival, and the festival culture is very particular, particularly for EDM festivals. It's a bit different for, I guess, bigger, more mainstream festivals. But this particular one, everybody is dressed in festival clothes, spunky hair. Like the boys are shirtless or have harnesses on or fishnets, and like you can tell. And so when the person's dressed regular or like normal, they stand out. And
Mm.
every time it's like, okay, what are you doing here? And I was, chilling, waiting in line for a beer, on my way to get a beer. And this guy dressed in normal clothes, like not festival clothes, like he could go for like I don't know, maybe to a brewery in these clothes in public, stops me and starts like asking me for my Instagram or my number. And I'm dressed in like festival clothes. Like I have this dress with a hood and it's like all sheer and stuff. And I'm like, oh, I don't have any pockets. I don't have my phone on me. And my roommate is watching. And he's like, I was ready to jump into that. I was able to like, walk away, be like, oh, I don't have my phone, bye. But I was able to walk away. And my roommate immediately was, oh, there was like, that situation seemed off because he was a guy who was dressed in normal clothes trying to talk to me. But same time, I'm finally get to the beer line. And I'm like dancing to the music in the line. And this other guy's on the floor. He starts dancing with me on the floor. And I'm like, see, this is a normal festival interaction. This is what I'm expecting.
Oh, see,
Like,
but here's
even
the
if-
thing, though. Bubbles like that, they provide really good cover for like predators because all you have to do to make someone feel safe is adhere to the customs of the bubble.
True, true.
But isn't that true for any bubble?
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Okay, this is gonna sound so silly, but I'm gonna say it out loud because we're just like sharing ideas here. Maybe that is why the bear feels safer because it belongs in the forest. Like, why is the man there? But then why am I there? Well,
Oh.
I didn't mean to be there. I was transported. But also, why are
Yeah.
you here? But then you got transported here too. But the bear almost feels more reasonable to my brain where I'm like, yeah, of course the bear is here. It lives here. I'm in its house. Like a shark. I'm not afraid of sharks. I'm not afraid of the ocean. Like if I die because of a shark, like I was in its house. I just feel like that's fair. It's like kind of sad, but like it's kind of fair too. Like I remember I was in Hawaii and they're like, hey, there's a tiger shark like a few beaches over. You got to get out of the water. And I was like, well, I mean, like it's a few beaches over. It'll be fine. And like it's one of those things where like we got out of the water because they told us we had to, but it was one of those things where my brain processes it as like I'm in your house. But also maybe that's why, like right when you said that, like, oh, he stood out to me, I'm thinking of a man like, why are you here? But then of course he's there because we both got zapped into this forest, girl. So it's kind of like also unfair. Yeah. I wonder if that was a part of it.
That's a really, that's very interesting because I think that did influence me for sure. Like earlier when I was like, oh, like if I see a bear and it like ignores me and keeps on going, I'm not necessarily going to be worried about it because in my mind, I'm like, he's just going through his bear life in the forest. And as long as he doesn't see me as a risk, he's just going to do his bear shit. Whereas I'm like, what is this strange man?
Yeah.
What are you doing here?
Yeah.
Without obviously
Yeah.
logically thinking like in this hypothetical, we're both here because of this crazy scenario. But
Yeah.
like, I'm assuming that he's there with malintent initially because
I mean, to be
people
fair.
generally, yeah.
Had I randomly been in the middle of the forest and you didn't look like a hiker and you look like you might have a cabin out here, I would be like extra worried. Like, oh,
Yeah. But I'm like,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
the bear's just doing like the bear's just doing his thing.
Yeah.
So as long as I let him know that I don't want to like, I'm not a
Mhm.
threat, I feel like it's more anticipated that you could run into a wild animal.
Sure.
Well, yeah, the metacognitive, metasocial aspect of humans just makes all the directions that they could go if they were ill-intended very scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bears are just very straightforward. They don't have the same social machinery that, us evolved apes have.
Yeah. It's either gonna like
Oh.
attack me because it thinks I'm a threat, or it's gonna eat me because it's hungry. But
Right.
those are kind of the
yeah.
two options.
I think
Not all
if
other weird shit.
you ask me like a chimpanzee or like a gorilla over a man, I choose a man. Like I'm gonna
Oh.
be real with you. I have a love for bears. Like I'm biased. I have a bear emoji as my YouTube member. Like I love bears. I want to hug a bear before I die. because they never kill you on the first time. It's always like 18th hug. You know, it's like the
Well, that's
idiot.
so interesting. But you choose a man over a gorilla.
Oh, I choose a man over a gorilla any fucking day, bro. Ain't
Oh,
no
why is
way
that?
I'm in a forest with a gorilla in a jungle. Fuck.
Yeah, they're smarter. Well, they're smarter than bears.
They
yeah.
scare the fuck out of me, bro. They
Yeah,
scare
no,
the
they're-
literal
yeah.
fuck out of me. I was like,
Okay, what
Mm.
about like a tiger or a man?
Ooh,
Same
nobody
as
fucks with
bears.
a tiger, bro. Nobody fucks with a tiger. I'm gonna be real with you. Nobody
Yeah.
cats? Nobody gonna be fucking with a cat, bro. It's just a
Yeah,
bear. A bear
there's
makes me
something much more
biased.
predatory about cats too. Cats are like bears don't feel as predatory,
'Cause
which,
they're
but they
not.
are though.
People
But like, why
interact
don't
with
they?
bears so much, and they do not. There's like 40 bear deaths a year globally.
Mhm.
Nobody gives a fuck about a bear, bro. Like I'm in comparison, like in comparison to a tiger, I ain't fucking with no cats, no gorillas, none of that. See, and then same with a shark. I don't care about a shark. 6 deaths a year. Who fucking cares? But we still go in the
We know-
ocean.
I mean,
People go in the
600
ocean.
Girl, I was afraid to pick up the starfish in the ocean, so you know.
That's what I mean.
I
I don't know why are we acting like picking up bear in a forest is weird when we swim in the ocean every day. Like I
Yeah.
don't know why we're being so
Yeah.
weird about this. It's not the bear. It's like our relationship with the bear. I'm used to hiking. Bears people I know camp in bear country on purpose to see bears.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? They're not going out to the jungle to see tigers or gorillas. Well, unless they're experts, like
They-
unless but
Jane
people
Goodall-
casually
Jane
do
Goodall
that.
begs to differ.
Okay,
They could be on a safari.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Okay, so maybe the scenario just fucked everyone over because bears have like a positive like we have positive stories of bears. You know how many positive bear stories came
Like
up on
Winnie
my
the
TikTok?
Pooh, you know.
Even like this woman who lives in the woods, she hangs out with these black bears. It's all over TikTok. Like I'm seeing all these great bear stories,
They go into her house and stuff. Yeah.
you know, and I'm just like, yeah, well, pick a bear.
Black bears are
Maybe
pretty.
it is-
They can kill you, but they're not very violent.
Yeah.
A lot of like Russian TikTok with bears that
Yes.
I come across.
Exactly.
But I was gonna say,
Russians
Oh
and
my
their bears.
yeah, we get a lot of like mountain lions in
Oh,
the
yeah.
hikes.
Gonna
Oh,
bring
yeah.
up mountain lions,
scare
like
me.
because I'm
Yeah.
from California. I don't feel I
Mhm.
feel the
I'm-
same about a mountain lion as I do about a bear.
As a
I
child,
feel like it
was
I
wouldn't
do
want to
too.
fuck with me if I didn't
Well,
give it reason to.
actually, I probably feel more afraid of a mountain lion. They seem faster. Bears seem like just big and bleh, but I mean,
But mountain lions are smaller
That's
compared
true.
to a
Yeah.
bear.
You could fight
True.
off a
Yeah.
baby mountain lion, like a man fought off a baby mountain lion, but a baby because in
you could not fight
California
off a bear.
we would go for
Mhm.
hikes and they would tell us like mountain lion, and as a child I was terrified of them because they're like in the bushes like waiting versus a bear is just like
Yeah.
clunky,
Yeah.
kind of just like I
Cats
don't know.
He's
seem
not
much more
camouflaging
furtive.
as
Yeah.
Yeah, like a bear isn't like hiding behind a bush and
Mhm.
he's like, "Rah!" Like no, that's not a bear's dog. Like a bear will let you know, and so I kind of feel like safer with bears generally speaking. I wonder if he asked the question about any other animal if we would have answered.
Yeah,
the
that's an
same.
interesting. That is, yeah. I mean, I probably would
Yeah.
have just because I don't know animals as well as humans, but yeah.
Mhm.
And survival is what I'm optimizing for.
Yeah. Well, what about culturally? Like okay,
Mhm.
Croatians like as a country, it's like one of the safest countries. But also, I've been warned that Balkan men, though lovely, when drunk and at bars, get very handsy. And as a woman, they don't recommend talking back. And I was like, okay, so like I will be warned that as like an American woman, like be careful talking back to a Balkan man because like they're not opposed to necessarily getting physical, but also they have this like pinching culture I've heard about. I don't know how like weird, like how prevalent it is in my area, but apparently like they pinch women a lot, like really hard. And I'm like, okay, if they touch me, I'm gonna get like mad. But then I just don't go to bars, but like specific bars, not all bars. Because talking about high trust, low trust, if I'm at a restaurant with a bar, which is different, and people leave their cell phone
Yeah.
and purse on the table, very normal to go out and smoke, very safe. But if you're at like a nightclub, from my understanding, and I could be wrong, I don't mean to speak ill of Croatia, but when you go to a nightclub, they're more likely to steal your stuff. So I think it's also the kind of place and what the expectation of what a gentleman might do maybe, or like what is appropriate, or like what are you asking for when you entered this environment, sort of plays a role maybe, you know?
I think
Yeah,
what's
there's like a
interesting with,
different intention, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I was gonna say, what you brought up, Brittany, about the bears and the forest because it belongs there, but we, as humans have been transported here. I think if anything, at least for me, that and this could be unwise, but for me that makes the man an even safer choice, because now we're both here with the fuck, like we're stuck in the forest, we've been transported, we're both now outside of our respective human bubbles. And and so that to me feels, I guess it's kind of like if I'm in a foreign country and I hear somebody speaking Russian, immediately I'm like, okay, cool, like there's like somebody that speaks the same language as me. Or if I hear somebody speaking in English, right, that immediately does something for the familiarity, even though those people could be totally not, if I interacted with them, it could end badly. But there's still some sort of sense of safety in being in a unfamiliar bubble and hearing something familiar. And so to me, the fact that both myself and the man have been transported to the forest gives us automatically a common ground compared to me and the bear.
I wonder how I would feel if the man who got transported in looked like my family members versus not. Even if he didn't speak English, I wonder if he felt familiar to me, if I would feel better about like how to interact with him, because maybe that'd be different. Because I kind of imagined a man who had no relationship to me, like a man that was very foreign from me. So like I wonder if it'd be different if like a man showed up and he was like even a religious person. Would I have like a different outlook? Maybe not, probably not. Well, no. If he was a Christian man, I would look at him suspicious. If he was a Catholic man or a specific kind of Catholic, I might be able to be like, okay, like we come from the same region in the world maybe, or maybe we have some connection. That's because I don't know Christians. You have to understand, like as a Catholic and as a person who has Orthodox in her background and Roman Catholic, like Christians are not my people. They're like foreign to me. I don't understand Protestants. I don't understand Lutherans. I don't understand Baptists. Like they are nothing like Catholics. So when I see them, like they're very foreign to me. I don't understand how they talk. The way they use words is so different. Even the word deconstruction is not a word Catholics use. We call it fallen away Catholics. Like it's not the same words. So it feels like I would be weirded out if a Christian man showed up, but if like a Catholic, an Orthodox, a Muslim, even a Muslim man would be more familiar to me. A Jewish man would be more familiar to me than like a Protestant.
Okay, this just told me about what bubble I'm in, because when you said Christian, I think of the Catholics and the Orthodox Christians. Because when I talk about Protestants or Anglicans, or I call them the spin-off, that I get specific.
Yeah.
But if I'm talking about Christians, I'm automatically thinking of Orthodox and of Catholic, which is interesting.
That is interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and in none of those am I thinking Mormons. I don't even think about them.
Yeah. That's
Mormons are very similar to Catholics, I feel like.
I've been to one Mormon service and it was very similar. I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like I got invited by somebody. I got to go.
Just like
I started reading the Book of Mormon and I was confused because it was in my hotel room. I started reading it.
Oh, interesting.
Nice.
It was I don't even remember what words they were using, but yeah. It was not very similar to the Bible whatsoever in any way, shape, or form.
See, I appreciate the environment we've created to go through this hypothetical, because it has allowed me to think about things like in a much more interesting way than I've been able to do discourse with the internet. But like this has been much more interesting, because then, yeah, I have so much more to think about now. Like, ooh, what if it, like you said, envision, like if you could get the picture of the man you saw. Even when you said that, I still imagine someone very far from my trust circle. Like if I looked at them, I'd be like, no, like I don't know what to do here. But if I was somebody like in my, like again, like I think about the bubbles and I think about the kind, or even I noticed that on TikTok, the kinds of men that were supporting the women were men that, and I'm going to use this language, but they were men who were less conservative, but not necessarily progressive. They were more like, probably grew up conservative, but more liberal, but like, or the very progressive kind of men looking people. Like they looked different than the men who were like, I can't believe you chose a fucking bear. And I'm like, okay.
They
But like,
seemed, the ones I saw seemed much more in touch with their embodied sense of knowing.
yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Which I think is more of a liberal tendency.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think the data shows that, which is interesting. By the way, can I
Yeah.
check in with you ladies? We're about 3 hours in. How we feeling?
I probably got about 10 or 20 more minutes in me.
I think that sounds about right. Is there anything we
Yep.
haven't talked about that I feel like you guys feel like we should have brought up? I know Chad asked a really interesting question actually, and I think we kind of covered it, but we can go into more detail if you'd like. How does mental health play a role in intuition and knowing if you're right or wrong about that intuition? And like for me, it goes back. I know I keep saying it, but I'm really a data girl. As much as I sound woo woo, the woo woo is informed by data. Okay, like
hmm
and so I do think trauma can play a role. Again, though, I think I'm medium traumatized. So I'm not severely traumatized and I'm not like not traumatized. I'm medium. So I grew up with like a code of honor and like a Bible, and I grew up with a religion. So it guided me through my trauma a lot. It kept me like focused on like, okay, people shouldn't steal and you shouldn't cheat and you shouldn't do these things and you shouldn't do these things. So at least I had some sort of foundation that I think helped inform that intuition. You know what I mean? And not everything in my childhood was horrible, right? I had a lot of really good things happen. So I think that probably informed my trauma, which allowed me to make better judgments, even though it was enough to traumatize. It wasn't enough to like, I got better by 30, which is pretty good. Not that I'm, again, fully healed or anything, but at least I found my footing at 30, which I would say is pretty damn good.
Yeah, I think trauma like has a huge impact on your embodied sense of like safety. Like that's what trauma is not feeling safe in your body, because of a traumatic event. And that will severe like I think trauma makes people sticky, because of the how we have to survive when we've encountered trauma. So as a way to survive, we experience something really traumatic. Our brain does this thing where okay, we stick to that pattern. We see that pattern everywhere as a way to keep us safe from it happening again. But really it's kind of like a form of attachment, right? If I see this pattern everywhere, I'm sticking myself onto the pattern where I don't need to. It's manipulating what's salient to me. It's manipulating how I see things. It's definitely going to change my sense of intuition, I think, my embodied sense of intuition and what actually makes me feel safe or not. Um, Using the definition of intuition as like pattern seeking, your body's going to naturally see more potential for the trauma that you experience as a way to keep you safe from it happening again.
Is there something wrong with that inherently as long as you're not hurting other people? Because I kind of have this ideal where I'm like, if you're so traumatized that like men upset you, leave them out of your life and don't bother them until you're better, right? Like, meaning don't make your like pain other people's pain. Don't hurt people because you're hurt type thing. I think some people though, a lot of white knights out here be like, I can save you, I can fill this void, I can be this person, and then when the women hurt them, they're like, what the fuck? And I'm like, leave traumatized women alone. Let them figure it out. But then at the same time, that was part of my learning tools. Ultimately, like, as annoying as because I remember telling like this one man, I was like, leave me alone. I'm in the middle of stuff. I don't want to engage with you. And he was like, I think we should engage. And I'm like, and so for 2 years of my life, I engaged. And I learned so many fucking lessons. But like, also, it taught me that I don't like men who engage with traumatized women but it was so important for me. And it really did make my life better, but not because of him, but because I learned the lessons that people taught me. Like people who try to like be the white knight in your life, they're turning your trauma into their trauma. Which is why I didn't like the men reacting to the bear TikTok because they were like, "What about me?" And I was like, "What about you? What about you?" I'm like, see, I get frustrated. I get
hmm
frustrated.
I mean, I think it just goes to show that I think what is it, a Buddhist thing where they're like the root of all suffering is attachment. Like
Let it go,
I really
girl.
believe it. That's why trauma is so painful to go through because your body is literally your brain is making you attached to everything, which is making you just all pain, all danger. It's very yeah. So it's not the best way to be, but it is your brain braining and your brain keeping you safe. It takes a lot to retrain your brain that you're safe. You don't need to see this pattern everywhere anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
So it's not the best way to be, but yeah, go ahead,
sorry, I was gonna say in terms of figuring out whether your intuition is your trauma, a really good tool that a few years ago my therapist gave me is asking yourself, what is the evidence?
Mm.
And that is what intuition is, right? Pattern recognition. And so if you have a bad feeling about someone and you think maybe this is your trauma talking, just maybe make a list. Hey, who is this reminding me of? Why is this person or situation reminding me of this? What evidence do I have that they are like this? Is it because of their appearance? Is it because of the way they present themselves? Is it the way that their body language is, the way they act? And kind of just maybe writing it down and saying it out loud can really help can help externalize it, and therefore help you look at it maybe in a bit more of an objective way. And even talking to somebody that you trust, like, hey, I have this feeling about this person, and maybe the person that you trust has the same impression, or they're like, hey, yeah, I can see why you're thinking this way, but in my experience this person doesn't, isn't this way or is this way or whatever, blah, blah, blah. So I think just externalizing it will help you reset your compass a little bit as you heal and go on that journey.
Well, I think I haven't talked about it in a long while now because, again, like, as much as I did DBT, like, I'm not a therapist, I can't teach you DBT, but I remember one of the things my DBT therapist had me do was she would ask me anytime I was feeling upset, I would ask myself, like, where am I? Who am I? Just to confirm with myself. Am I safe? Then why do I feel unsafe? Because usually I would be like, yeah, I'm safe. Then why do you feel unsafe? It's like, ask yourself these 4 questions, ground yourself. And I'd be like, okay. And I did that for so long and it completely shifted my whole life because, like, your body really is like, it's moving, especially if you've had panic attacks or something. You're like, what is going on, bro? And so it really, really saved my life. It genuinely did. Yeah.
And even having a dialogue with your emotion, your fear, or whatever it is, like, oh my gosh, talk about like a way to detach from the
Mm.
emotion. Just talk to it like it's its own thing,
Yep.
so that you don't have to like wear it over your skin. You can put it there and talk to it and discover where it came from, why it's acting this way, and yeah.
Yeah.
That's a whole other trajectory for me.
I do like I do that as well where I try to, and I think that's why I like categorization because I'm like I almost like pull this version of me and I'm like, sit here, Brittany. Okay, which Brittany is that? Why are you reacting that way? And I'm like, okay, like this is what you're doing here, but like this Brittany, like I'm gonna make it less personal. Like, why are you upset here? And usually, and I always say this on the stream, I feel like when I'm upset at myself for either not understanding, not or wanting it to change and I can't change it, and not letting go of the fact that I'm not in control of this. It's about you. Like being upset,
Mhm.
even when someone, see, the problem is like in an ideal world, the person who's, let's say, the victim can realize it's still about them, and the person who's the predator can still realize it's about them. And we'd each take care of our sides of the sidewalk. You know what I mean? Our sides of the street. Like, and we'd be able to build off. But what often happens is like people become more responsible. And I hate that because I'm like, I can't be responsible for you and for me. So I got to do what's me. But recognizing like it is me, it's my perception, it's my relationship, it's my connection to the pain. And so letting go of like that realization, like I can't get that. Like forgiveness isn't for them, it's for me. Like letting go isn't for them, it's for me. They still need to do their thing and hold themselves accountable, but like I can't hold them accountable to my values. Like we don't share values. I can only hold myself accountable to my own values. And if I failed myself in that way, then I need to like pick myself back up and get back on track, finding that balance. Going back to that beginning part of that conversation is like, if I'm out of balance, it doesn't matter if I feel like the world did it. I'm the one who's like allowing them to do it in a way, or it's me. It's not even them. It's me. So then I have to become balanced, which can often look like shutting out the world, but what you're doing is you're like unattaching yourself from tethering yourself to the world. So that way
Yes.
when their boat starts to sail away, it doesn't pull you with them. Cut the line
Yes.
and let it float away. And so you can,
Yes. Yes. I'm all about that detachment, man.
mm.
And honestly, the weird thing is, okay, we hear the word detachment and we think all of these things from it. It feels like a very scary word to us, humans want to attach and be loved and seen. But like I sincerely think that, like, okay, parenting, for example, when I can detach from my son, like not detach, but like when I don't have to be so consumed with like myself in it, I can be a better parent if
Well, you're honoring his
you know,
consciousness. You're honoring
yes,
his journey.
yes, yes, yeah. It's hard to exactly use the right words,
I think
but yeah.
people are afraid of being abandoned
Hmm.
instead of loved for exactly who they are, because I'm not attached to the outcome of who you are.
Yes, yes. You are allowed to be whoever you are, and that doesn't really have anything to do with me.
Right.
All that it has to do with me is that I'm providing a safe, healthy, loving environment for you to become who you are. Yeah.
Right.
And there is a detachment that has to take place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt and or maybe change the subject just a little bit, but the chat asked a good question of what if the man looked like Harry Styles? Would that change the women's answers? But
I would
then
choose a
also the
bear.
chat started talking about pandas,
Maybe more so. But
specifically bears. So if we can have Harry Styles as the man versus having a panda, I'd choose the panda.
Panda, bro. Also,
yeah, I
Harry
don't.
Styles gives me
Celebrity, good-looking people are way dangerous. Are you
No,
kidding?
no.
They're used to getting exactly what they want.
Harry Styles is exactly the category of guy that maybe it's my trauma or maybe it's not, but I'm like, nope, whatever that is, that sounds like a lot. Considering that Olivia Wilde left Jason Sudeikis for him, tells me, a marriage and 2 kids for Harry Styles, red flag.
Okay, good-looking men are not safer. Are
Mm-mm.
not at
I don't even
all
know how good
safer than
looking he
ugly
is
men.
because like I see so much bias in like the way I see him, but like I don't even know if he's
Yeah.
safe. But see, I don't know why, but my
Mm.
intuition says absolutely not. Whatever this is going on here, I don't want to talk to you.
You
He
want
might be
Actually,
nice
someone
to
like
nothing to do
me.
with
Harry Styles feels more dangerous to me than an average man, to be honest.
Oh,
with you.
absolutely.
Because
Like no ma'am.
ego on a man,
Mm-mm.
that's dangerous.
Mm-mm.
Mhm.
I don't know Harry Styles as a person, but a man looking like Harry Styles played the man from Don't Worry, Darling, and he absolutely disgusted me. So him looking like Harry
Well, just
Styles
knowing
did
he's a
We-
celebrity gives me enough info. I could be wrong, but yeah.
To be fair, the person did say looks like Harry Styles. So I was saying there's a category
Okay.
look like Harry Styles, but
Oh,
still
that doesn't matter to me.
Still
not-
no.
not-
Fuck boy energy, bro. I don't trust no fuck
Yeah.
boy energy at all. 0 fuck boys in a forest.
Same.
Mm-mm.
Same.
Yeah, they definitely don't belong in the forest. Give me the bear who lives there.
Mhm.
In that case.
Mhm.
Actually, there's a certain type of man that I would definitely never choose. Yeah.
Do you know
Yeah,
the
there's a lot of nuance
a
to this question.
privileged,
Yeah.
like a privileged white man who's somewhat good looking, entitled. Yeah, I probably wouldn't choose him.
Or someone who's extra masculine? Absolutely not. Like anyone who looks like they're riddled with testosterone.
See, I can deal with the masculine men because often all you have to do is be extra feminine with those guys.
Okay,
But
you know what? That's not my strong suit. I'm gonna be real with you.
Fair.
I think that's my problem.
you
It's
probably
like,
shouldn't. You
it's
probably
not my strong suit. I think I'm
You've
gonna
got to
become more masculine.
perform extreme femininity with those
Being
men.
around
Yes,
masculine
exactly,
men makes me more
literally.
masculine, and being around feminine men makes me more masculine. I'm fucked. I'm fucked.
That's funny. Hmm.
I think Maiden or Harmony, when you described the type of man you wouldn't want to be stuck with, it reminded me of Homelander. My fiance and I started watching The Boys, and I was like, oh, Homelander. That is a forest.
1000%.
Yeah.
1000%. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
But if the man was, so it would also depend on the presentation. So like if the man looked like anybody, but for example, was wearing like festival clothes, I would be like, okay, like I'll pick him. But no matter what, whether he looked like Harry Styles or like, I don't know, it's not fair because I also find him, and not that I find Harry Styles particularly attractive, but I find, oh my God, Willem Dafoe. Whether he looks like Harry Styles or Willem Dafoe, but Willem Dafoe is very hot. No comment, no questions. Thank you. I would be down with that. Versus if it's a man who's wearing something like what Harry Styles was wearing in Don't Worry, Darling. The spoiler alert, mute this part if you want to see the movie. Or has anybody not seen that movie and or will watch it? Okay.
Oh, good.
No, we're good. Okay.
Good,
When
good.
in the real world, Harry Styles, incel-y kind of character, what he was wearing and kind of how he presented himself, that would set alarm bells off in my brain. So it's a lot about like presentation as well,
Mhm.
and not just the genetic what you look like. It's also about how you present yourself.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
gives our intuition clues, right? On like what do those presentation choices mean, most likely.
I've tried. So there's a particular kind of aesthetic in a guy that's so like your brain's like that's attractive, but then every time I tried to like assume they could be like I don't want to say a good person because that's not quite the right word, but like a well-intentioned person, it never pans out. And I'm always interested in that. Like, that's why I look at certain people and I'm like, I don't want to judge you because of somebody else, but you have a pattern. And out of all the aesthetics you could have chosen, you're choosing this aesthetic. But then,
It
because
reminds me of Huberman. Huberman, he knows how to look smacks, and there's
that's
something off about that.
that's so
Yeah.
funny you say that because in the past,
Mhm.
I was like, oh, Huberman's kind of got that like daddy vibe. Oh, wait. See, my brain wants to be like, oh, cool, beards. And then my brain's like, wait. Because it's that masculine daddy aesthetic that I'm like, and then I don't want anyone to get mad because like lots of people have that aesthetic and they're not the worst people ever. But like, there's something about a specific kind of version of it. So then it's the subcategories of that version. Like I love a gamer
And there
boy,
it goes to the why. Why are you? Yeah.
and then the healthy versus the unhealthy. So like I always dated gamer boys, and I was like, okay, why the fuck are you all toxic? I know this can't be true. And then I found the healthy version of my favorite trope in a boy, and I was like, okay, so
Get
my
married.
see, my intuition was right that I liked what I liked, but I kept picking the toxic version.
Yeah.
I'm like, where's the healthy version? And let me tell you, unhealthy gamer boys are some of the most toxic people I've ever interacted with in my life. I'm so exhausted by them, but a healthy version of a gamer boy, they're so nice. They're so sweet. They're so attentive. They're so thoughtful. They're so imaginative. They're just so like, they go out of their way. They're so interesting. They have so much to say about everything. Like, I love them so much. And so when I meet one, I'm like, oh, this is it. This is like the healthy version. And I'm like, they're wonderful. Even the girls I know or the boys I know who are in relationships with them, their relationships are so cute. They have the greatest relationship. But the toxic ones, all my friends that are dating the toxic version, oh my god. It's like
It's
cheating
so
and
hard to tell
stories and oh
sometimes.
my gosh. I'm telling you.
Well, yeah, it takes like learning through experience. It's kind of like that's similar to the distinction between like agape love and codependence. It's like,
Yes,
oh, there's
yes,
a healthy version and a really
yes.
gross toxic version.
The
It's
go-
like,
Yeah.
yes.
yeah, the why is important. The why, yeah, and how I don't know, introspective, but that's not quite the right word. But
But
you
how
know what I'm
aware they
getting
are
at?
of their own trauma.
How
I've noticed
aware,
the
Yeah.
ones who doubt or don't engage in
Mhm.
their trauma in the right way, which is my pattern. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, but they kind of like it. They kind of fucking like their trauma, bro. It's the ones that have gone to the therapy. That's why I like think my partner was so attractive to me when I first met him because he's like, oh, I like went to therapy and like I've got my own life and I've done my own thing and I got my own hobbies, and it was so
Nothing
apparent.
releases like chemicals in our body the way emotions do. They are very
Oh,
addictive.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Like even
Mhm.
just building like a safe. I don't even know how to explain it. Like it's so interesting like when you're actually in a healthier relationship as somebody who wasn't in one, like even the way the parents react to you is so different. Like even in my toxic relationships, the parents of the men I dated, because that's the even the women I dated didn't those were always great, so like I never talk about them. But like the boys were so much harder because like even their parents could tell something was off, and they always liked me enough to be like, don't. And I'm like, I like that. Versus now, my in-laws, every time they see us, they're like relieved. Like, okay, you're so happy. Like you're so in love. And like even we met some family friends yesterday and I went to the bathroom and apparently they liked me. And I was like, oh my God, what a relief. Because that anxiety is still there. Like, oh my God, does the family like me? Does the family friends like me? Do the extended family like me? And same with my partner. I think that anxiety exists because you're always worried like you're gonna bond and make a life like the stories you could have been, the stories I could have been, and I'm just so happy my story didn't go in that direction because it just would have been such a miserable fucking life, bro. And I'm just so grateful I changed my story, I think, but also that I had a family that let me change my story 1,000 times till I got it right. Yeah.
And
Mhm.
you trusted your intuition enough to kind of keep trying too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, and I really am data focused. I don't know if I got that from DBT, but I might have because everything about DBT was like, do you have the evidence like Arena said for this? Do you have the
Yeah.
evidence for what's your evidence? And I was like, okay. Yeah.
And then you have to interpret the evidence correctly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Being a human's complicated, man. So meta.
Yeah. How are we feeling? We it's been a while. We're already at 3 hours and 10 minutes.
Yeah, I gotta go pee, so it's
Me
probably
too,
a good
girl. I
stopping
gotta
off
pee
point for
so
me.
bad,
too.
girl.
Me too.
Yeah. Well, good conversation. I'm glad we could have Danielle on. Let's
Yeah,
have her,
really good.
back again. And I appreciate you guys being here. I really loved this conversation. It was really good.
Yeah, it was good. It was good.
This
It
was
fun.
really fun. Yes, I like the direction that it went and
Yeah.
the prompt and inspiration to talk about a bear versus a man. That was really good. I'm glad we did
That
this.
was great. That was great. All right, ladies, please enjoy your weekend and I'll see you next month.
Bye, guys. Thank you so
Bye.
much. Take care.
Bye. All right, guys. I'm going to head out too. Please enjoy your weekend and thank you for being here on the stream. I appreciate it.